Hello friends, welcome to Universe of Naruto X. If you love Naruto what if stories and anime explanations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now let's begin today's story. What if Naruto was kidnapped as a child and Ino changed his broken destiny forever? The forest was a large place that covered most of Fire Country. If you didn't know your way around the dense area, then it would be easy for you to get lost in the vast space it occupies. Naturally, shinobi ranked Chunin and up had excellent knowledge of said forest from their experience in traveling through it so many times. The point I'm trying to make is that the percentage of Konoha's elite Anbu getting lost was absolute zero. Currently the four-man squad were doing another routine rescue sweep in search of their village's lost blonde Jinchuriki. This had been their and many others' job for the past 5 years. Personally, they only get the shift 2 nights every 2 months or so. It all depended if they were on a mission or not. Fortune must have been watching over them tonight because after 5 long years they found him stumbling his way into their line of sight. This surprised them immensely because they had given up all hope of finding the young boy. Said blonde was now 10 years old and was covered in dirt. We found him. We finally found him and he's actually alive. The elite with the frog mask said, filled with joy. I know. The female wearing the cat mask agreed. Now Hokage-sama can rest easy knowing the boy is safe. She added with a sigh. The leader of the group narrowed his eyes at the walking blonde below them. Wait, something's wrong with him. The snake-masked leader said. I noticed that as well. The boy is clearly injured. The last squad member, Hawk, informed with an inward grimace. Below the group of 4 was the source of their concerns. Said blonde was limping and simultaneously holding his right dislocated shoulder. His was Naruto Uzumaki, the container of the Kyuubi no Yoko and the bane of more than 55% of the villagers. He had lightly tanned skin and 3 whisker marks lining each cheek. His blonde hair was barely visible under all the mud and dried blood that covered it. His clothing consisted of a ragged white shirt. The shirt itself couldn't even be called a shirt. Its condition allowed it to barely cling onto the child's useless arm. His arms were wrapped with white tape. The tape covered both of the boy's arm entirely, from the fingers all the way to the shoulder. Unfortunately, some of the tape had cuts through them and were dyed red with blood. If you were to look closely enough, you would be able to see the faint cuts that marked his lightly tanned skin. His black pants were in relatively good shape. Some of its material was sliced open, but an average tailor would have no problem repairing the piece of garment. His feet were bare. He must have been walking for some time because his feet had calluses lining the outside of his soles. He checked behind him, most likely checking that he was safe. Someone must have been chasing him for some time because there seemed to be fear in his young eyes. Well, whoever it was seemed to have lost interest because no one was behind him. He breathed a sigh of relief before he took a deep breath, mentally preparing himself for what he was about to do. The squad narrowed their eyes at the blonde, not sure what was about to happen. The sound of grinding bones was drowned out by the blonde's scream, which resonated throughout the forest. The piercing scream woke the sleeping animals and caused them to scramble in fear. Naruto wobbled on his feet before he dropped to his knees and then, fully, to the floor. It was clear from his unmoving body that he was out cold from the shock. Cad looked on with obvious womanly worries. Even though she was worried about the blonde, she kept her composure strictly professional. What do you think happened to him? She asked, not able to keep from wincing from the piercing scream. It doesn't matter. We have to take him to the village, preferably to the hospital. Snake said after he and the others landed on the ground. L&F 30 minutes later the team escorted the unconscious blonde into the village. The old Hokage sighed in depression as he signed another document and stamped it with the Hokage seal. It was a regular mission request from some farmer that needed a team to escort him back to his lodgings. The house was located at the edge of the country, near river country. Just the fact that Point B was near a country that they had a rocky relationship with made him label the mission as AB rank. His muscles tensed as he sensed chakra entering the room via body flicker. He raised his head and relaxed when he noticed it was 2 members of the squad he sent on the rescue sweep not even an hour ago. Why is it that you've returned so soon? The wrinkled sand aim questioned, returning his gaze back to the late night paperwork. The leader of the squad dropped to a single knee before speaking. Apologies Hokage-sama, but the mission is no longer necessary. he said, prompting the old man to snap his head back up, anger clear in his eyes. What the hell do you mean no longer necessary? You have 5 seconds to rephrase yourself, the old man said with pure anger dripping from his voice. It was at that moment that the leader of the Anbu squad tensed in fear as the Hokage's ki flooded his nervous system. He resisted the urge to drop to his knees and gasp for air with sheer willpower. What he wanted to say was that we found Naruto-kun. Frog spoke up, prompting the elder to release the ki in a quick heartbeat. That's who the others took to the hospital, the Sandaime asked, having sensed them not too long ago. If that's the case, what are we still doing here? He said, standing to his feet. His gaze returned back to Snake, his eyes apologetic for his rash behavior. No need to apologize, Hokage-sama. It was my fault. I warded his return wrong. Sarutobi smiled softly as his visage steeled itself before the trio used the shunshin to quickly travel to the hospital. L&F. When the Hokage and company arrived at the hospital, he had to refrain himself from cringing at Naruto's state as he was being carted off to a vacant room. He waited for 30 anxious minutes as they worked on the blonde. He got the green light to enter by the doctor that worked on the blonde. He looked at the boy and again couldn't refrain from cringing at Naruto's state. The boy looked like a mummy with the amount of gauze wrapped around his upper body. Was the damage really that extensive? The old man questioned. The male doctor shook his head. Not at all. The only serious damage is on his person was his right shoulder and left ankle. Luckily, the shoulder was only dislocated and not broken. We took a look at it and found the area was heavily bruised with a few cuts on and around it. He said, looking at the sheet held by his clipboard. His ankle was in the same condition as his shoulder, only minus the cuts. Sarutobi looked over the boy's body with aged eyes. His eyes narrowed when he noticed some qualities that many shinobi shared. Judging from his face only, his muscle quality was higher than most children his age and even some of the younger ninjas in his charge. It was the same with his chakra capacity, but that wasn't a surprise considering what was sealed inside. Eagle, I need you to get Inoki and bring him here, he ordered without lifting his eyes from Naruto's frame. Eagle nodded his head and swiftly left the room in a leafless body flicker. The other Anbu knew they were longer needed visually, so they vanished from sight, yet remained in the room. I noticed while he was being carted off that he had both of his arms bandaged already. Was he already treated before coming here? Here is, Ino said, finally lifting his head and looking at the doctor. The man shook his head. No, there were cuts along the tape as well. It must have been in place before he was attacked, the doctor said, glancing at the clipboard. When we removed the tape, we found nothing under them except faint traces of red lines. It's obvious he was attacked with some sort of man-made weapon, most likely a sword or knife. He added, already knowing what the Hokage was going to ask. It was at that time that his Anbu returned, Inoki in tow. The tall, pale, blonde-haired man half asleep. It wasn't surprising since it was almost 2 o'clock in the morning. He was wearing a simple white shirt with simple blue sweatpants. His pupil-less green eyes were half-lidded, further showing his exhausted state. Great, Inoki, you're here. Sorry for waking you, but I need your mind-walking expertise. Naruto's been gone for 5 years. I want to know what he's been through. The Sandaime informed the Yamanaka clan head, not at all concerned about invading Naruto's personal space. Don't you think walking into the mind of a Jinchuriki is beyond suicide? Inoki asked, not up for the mission at all. The Hokage looked at the man in such a way that it immediately woke the man up and replaced the exhaustion with fear. What I meant to say was, I'll get right to it, Hokage-sama, the man said, walking up to Naruto and placing his hand atop his head. His grave was already dug. Now it was up to the Kyuubi if he was going to be buried inside. Inside Naruto's mind, the Yamanaka found himself in a jungle-like area. His hand was resting against the hard bark of an oak tree. He pushed off, already on edge, as further ahead was where he would likely meet his end. Speaking of further ahead, it looked as if it was swallowed in smoke. Inoki could barely see where he was going. Hello, anyone in here? He asked, already knowing that his presence was sensed as soon as he entered the area. There was no use in hiding that he was here. Hello, who's there? A reply was yelled back. His fatherly instincts kicked in because the voice sounded young and feminine, just like his own daughter. He ran deeper into the foggy area. He could now hear sobbing and picked up his pace, now running in a sprint. He skidded to a stop as he entered a clear area. What entered his sights was that of a crimson-haired teenager wearing a skimpy outfit. Said outfit consisted of a black bra with red flames, which covered a nice full pair of C-cup. For bottoms, she was wearing a pair of spandex-style booty shorts. A silver belt was wrapped loosely around her waist. Around her neck was a white and red fluffy-looking scarf. Light pink spandex socks hiked up her legs. They only left 2 in of actual skin visible for her lower body. She wore white boots with the same red flames flaring on the bottom of the soles. Her crimson hair was really long for someone her age. It was fixed into a really long ponytail held together by 2 long golden pins that crisscrossed each other. She wore a cracked skull accessory in her hair and her amber eyes looked innocently at the grown man. She wore black gloves with several gold studs surrounding her thick wrists. Also, the left was quite longer, reaching the middle of her left bicep. Her beautiful amber eyes darkened into a crimson color before she vanished from her spot, disappearing into the surrounding smoke. This happened in a span of 5 seconds, not even enough time for Anoiki to say anything. Looks like there's another idiot strutting in here like he owns the I let the first one live. I won't make the same mistake again, she said, her voice echoing throughout the area. Wait, I come in peace, Anoiki quickly yelled. I only came in here to see Naruto-kun. He added, showing that he didn't have any ill will towards the young Jinchuriki. Moments passed by in silence. The fact that he wasn't dead yet proved that it was a good thing. That fact ended as Anoiki's ponytail suddenly exploded, simply coming undone. The man tensed, not sure if he should run or stay still. A loud sigh echoed through the smoke. That was a warning. Leave now or the next one goes in your neck, the voice said again, a strong hint of annoyance in her voice. Not wanting to look a gift horse in the mouth, the Yamanaka clan head immediately followed the order. He knew the girl was the Kyuubi guarding his mind from invaders. The question that plagued his mind though was, where was Naruto? A full minute came and went before the smoke in the air swirled for a while before converging into one spot. Moments later Naruto's body was formed. How much did you get? The redhead asked, leaping from her perch on a thick tree branch before walking towards Naruto. A crimson light flickered out of sight before she reached the blonde. Enough, Naruto replied, cracking his neck. Thanks for distracting him, otherwise he would have caught on to what I was doing. Naruto said, flashing her wide smile. She giggled and wrapped her live arms around his neck. Anytime, Naruto-kun, she said, hugging his head into her bosom. Naruto groaned before a thought crossed his mind. Anyway, Yoko, what are you wearing? You look like you're heading to the beach. Naruto breathlessly said while trying to pull himself from her grip. Yoko pouted before releasing him, making him fall on his butt. She put her hands on her hips. You don't like what I'm wearing? Just wait until you get older, then you'll want to see more of me. She said, pushing her together with her arms while bending at the waist. Color made itself visible on Naruto's cheeks as he turned his head from the view and stood to his feet. What else could you show me that I haven't already seen? He asked, holding his hand up, already knowing what she was going to say. She giggled before he continued speaking. Let's just see what's new about the village. The young blonde said, walking to a tree that dematerialized into a swirling mass of energy. Yoko's giggling grew as she latched her arms around Naruto's left bicep. Naruto's face resembled a tomato while he walked through reality. Anoiki released his hand from Naruto's head as if it was on fire. He stumbled backwards and breathed the largest sigh of relief in mankind. I knew it was dangerous in there, but what was that feeling in the back of my mind? Anoiki thought out loud while checking his ponytail. The Sandaim's eyes widened at Anoiki's retreat. What the hell happened in there? The older blonde held his head. It felt like somebody was stomping on his skull. After a while, he finally looked at the Hokage. He told the man what happened while in the boy's mindscape. It was a short story, but it had such a large meaning. That's an interesting story. I'm truly sorry for making you go in there. Here is an apologize before glancing towards the doctor before snapping his head back to Anoiki. Wait, the Kyuubi's a female. He yelled after the shocking information fully sunk in. Anoiki nodded his head, still surprised himself. I'm still reeling from that surprise myself, he said. The Sandaime returned his gaze back to the doctor. Is there anything else I should know? He asked, lifting the tip of his hat from over his eyes. The man shook his head, again looking at his clipboard. Nothing to warrant any action. Most of his wounds were partially healed by the time we got to them. The seal keeping his tenant from escaping was fully intact and the calluses covering the bottom of his feet were removed. He said, smiling as he looked back at the Hokage. The Sandaime nodded before looking back to Inoki. I would ask you to return for more information, but it's obvious the Kyuubi's protecting Naruto-kun while he's in this state. Thank you for your help. You can return to bed now, he said, giving a short bow and thanks. Inoki bowed in return. Anytime, Hokage-sama. The Yamanaka clan head lied before walking out the room. I estimate a full recovery in a few hours' time. The only thing I needed to do was provide him with a comfortable place to rest. The doctor replied to the Hokage's unasked question. The old man thanked the doctor before the man left the Hokage alone with the young blonde. The Hokage placed a hand atop the blonde's head, brushing a stray bang from in front of his eyes with his thumb. Oh, Naruto-kun, where have you been? He said softly as he thought about when he got the news that the blonde had disappeared. Flashback. He arose inside wearily as he continued to work on his paperwork for the night. The stacks had grown rather high when he returned from spending time with Naruto. It was the young blonde's 5th birthday, so he treated the boy to a bowl of ramen. He chuckled to himself when one bowl turned into 5 bowls. That boy fell in love with the exquisite taste of Ichiraku's ramen. I already know what his monthly stipends are going to be spent on. The Hokage softly said, remembering how Naruto was kicked out of the orphanage last week. He had fired the woman in charge but knew it was going to happen again. So he found the boy an apartment he could live in. It was small with a single bed and bath, but he didn't really need a lot of space as he was living alone. His train of thought was interrupted. Faint yells echoed throughout the village. He instantly shot up and stared out the window of his office. He looked in the direction of Naruto's apartment, knowing that's where the noise was coming from. I should have seen this coming, he muttered as his body flickered over there. By the time he got there, he was surprised to see a crowd formed outside of the apartment complex. It's empty. The demon's not inside, a gruff-looking man said while walking out of the apartment. Eyes widened as he noticed they standing on a building across them. Though having heard the words, Hiruzen only paid attention to a one, empty. That was impossible. He had just dropped the blonde off 30 minutes ago. How could he not be in there? The Hokage quickly passed the man and entered the apartment. It was barely furnished, only containing a small cot in the corner of the room, and a small dresser near it. The cot looked untouched, so Naruto must have not even touched it when he got home. He quickly scanned the kitchen, finding nothing that would give him a clue. He didn't need to go to the room in the back, since it was completely empty. Where the hell is Naruto? He thought out loud. Not a single clue was left in the apartment, not even a sliver of any remaining chakra. It was completely empty, dead inside. Rage filled his heart as he came to the conclusion that he was kidnapped. Anbu, he yelled. Instantly 4 Anbu members were in front of him, bowed on one knee. Find him, he yelled again as they quickly disappeared. Though yelling had calmed him down a little, he was still peeved that someone would abduct the boy he thought of as a grandchild. End flashback. Hiruzen shed a single tear as he thanked Kami that the boy has been returned to him. The sun had just peaked over the mountain overlooking the village when the Hokage got word that Naruto woke up. The man had only left for the office 2 hours prior to continue his paperwork. Finally, the boy is up. Now he could tell us what happened to him. The old man thought, dashing for the hospital. When the old man arrived at the hospital, he found something he wasn't expecting. What the hell happened? He questioned, the anger evident in his voice. He escaped. Hawk answered plainly, though he still couldn't explain to himself how he couldn't find the blonde. No, how did he escape with Anbu watching over him? The Sandaime questioned again. Snake began the simple explanation that the blonde filled the room with chakra-laced black smoke and escaped through the open window. After that, he just vanished in the air. The old man was left speechless at the simplicity of the escape. He then wondered about the skill his Anbu had if a 10-year-old was able to evade them so easily. L and F. Naruto stood in his old apartment. He was still surprised he knew where it was, having not been in it for 5 full years. Even then, he only had it for a short week. It was, now, fully furnished with lots of nice things. Some female, who looked to be in her late teens, was sleeping in the small twin bed. With only her head and a bit of her upper torso revealed, Naruto and his young, but matured mind, had to admit that the girl was extremely attractive. Her chocolate brown hair was slightly ruffled due to being asleep for hours. Though most importantly, the tops of her cleavage peeked out of what Naruto could deduce as her pink tank top. Hey, focus! An annoyed demonic voice yelled in the blonde's mind. He sucked his teeth in annoyance as he peeled his eyes away from the female with a bit of color gracing his cheeks. I was gone 5 years. I would have been surprised if everything was how I left it. Naruto thought, changing the subject. His attire only consisted of his ruined pair of pants and the new bandages the hospital staff wrapped around his upper body. From the looks of her, I'd guess she's a kunoichi. Maybe an old genin. Oh. Never mind. Naruto thought, eyeing the chunin vest at the foot of her bed before stealing another quick glance. Oh. Now you're paying attention to a female's body. Yoko said again, getting more annoyed. The blonde ignored her and kept analyzing his situation. He wasn't surprised he was able to get into the apartment so easily. His Kekkei Genkai made it easy for him to infiltrate any building unless it was completely sealed that not even air could get in. The best part about it, nobody in the village knew he had this special blood. He thought about his special blood, his Kekkei Genkai, his Kemuri no Henge. Smoke mutation, it gave him the ability to turn his body into smoke however he wanted, clothes included. It took him at least a month to include his clothes in that dilemma. The smoke had the properties of being noticeably thick and black or as thin and clear as air. He sucked his teeth one more time before he vanished in a puff of smoke. The thick cloud of smoke thinned out into the air, completely vanishing from sight. He reappeared on the roof. The roof of the apartment was wide with various potted plants around the sides. Behind him was a door that led down into the apartment. He gave a sigh, now wondering where he's going to live. He took a big breath as he extended his left arm. It was then that a thin wisp of nearly clear smoke wrapped around his arm and seeped through the bandages. Another smaller wisp merged into the base of his throat, again seeping through the bandages. 2 more, smaller, wisps merged into the inside of each individual wrist. The reasons for this was unknown, but Naruto flashed a large grin as he felt complete now. His eyes widened when a hand rested on his shoulder. My, Naruto-kun, it's just like you to stand atop this roof, huh? An aged voice asked behind him. Naruto flashed a large grin and faced the Hokage. I guess old habits die hard. I am sad the apartment is no longer mine. It was the only thing I could call mine. Naruto said, a frown replacing his smile. Hiruzen's face marred into a frown as well and he patted the young blonde's shoulder. I'm sorry for giving your apartment away, but it couldn't stay vacant for so long. Don't worry about it though. You can have the spot next to it. He said smiling brightly. Naruto's grin returned. Good. You're going to need the privacy. Yoko voiced in his head. The Hokage's sudden serious face put the blonde on edge. Now, I'm going to need you to tell me where you've been the past 5 years. He said, narrowing his eyes a bit. Naruto took a step back in caution. Well, he tried, but the old man's grip on his shoulder only tightened. I don't know. All I remember is waking up in the middle of the night with a hand covering my mouth. I was lifted and I felt a sharp pain in the back of my neck. After that, I woke up in the hospital and smoke was everywhere, so I jumped out the window. I was surprised that I made it to the next building, but I got over it and ran here. He said, looking down at his body, surprise written all over his face. I guess that's why I'm bigger than I remember. Have I been asleep these past 5 years? Did I miss my chance to enter the academy? Naruto asked, keeping the questions in the air, though he knew he was lying through his teeth. He just had to keep it off his face while the man was watching. The Sandaime looked down at the 10-year-old with a withering gaze. When the blonde rose his head to look at him, he began to sweat from the menacing gaze. Fortunately, the Sandaime took that as a fearful reaction than a nervous one. Okay, I believe you. Even though I find it peculiar that you returned on the same night you left. Hiruzen said, releasing his grip. Yesterday was the blonde's birthday, the same day he disappeared 5 years ago. Naruto took a few steps back, clutching his shoulder in pain before rubbing it. Slowly the pain began to fade. He's still got strength behind those brittle bones. The blonde thought as the old man turned his back to the boy. Don't worry, Og-san, I'm sure I'll remember what happened later. Naruto said, using Ogsan purposely. Hearing those words softened the Hokage's features. He turned his head and gave the boy a smile. I'm sure you will, Naruto-kun. Come to my office with me and I'll help you with the lease to the apartment. I was going to be giving you stipends every month until you became an adult or shinobi, but you left before I could start. But seeing as how you're back, I'll start now. But it'll only be until you graduate from the academy, all right? The Hokage said, walking to the roof's door so they could begin their walking journey to the Hokage building. Naruto cheered, following the Hokage down through the apartment building and into the streets. Of course, I'll have to give you psychological and physical exams. I have to make sure you're healthy before I make you a student. The man said, smiling as his village slowly started filling with morning activity. And you'll have to see a therapist every now and again so I can see if your condition improves. The man added, looking at the smiling blonde. As long as I have my privacy, I'll endure anything he throws at me. Naruto thought, with a large grin splitting his face in two. 1 year later, the time was 6 o'clock in the morning when Naruto finished his morning routine. The blonde had grown a bit this last year. First off, he grew 2 more inches, now reaching 4.5 feet in height. His attire consisted of a simple white shirt with Konoha's symbol on the front. Light blue shorts made up his bottoms and blue ninja sandals for his feet. The white tape remained on his arms, though they ended before reaching his elbows. Also, a black skin-tight undershirt was worn underneath. Its collar wrapped high around his neck, stopping just underneath his chin. He wore these 2 shirts despite knowing of the heat the country was known for. His spiky, bright blonde hair shined to mirror his happiness. He only had 1 more year before he officially became a ninja of Konoha. Truthfully, he was only happy because it was the last day of his secret probation. Ever since he appeared in the village, Anbu has been shadowing him day and night. They watched him get up, go to school, and even sleep. They even watched him train, so he was only limited to taijutsu. Though today, he didn't feel a thing from them, signifying that they were indeed gone. The only one he couldn't sense was the Hokage. Damn, that man sure does know how to completely vanish from my senses. Naruto thought, though it seems he could barely drop off his radar. He brushed a hand through his hair as a crooked smirk made its way to his face. The old man was rightfully paranoid about you, Naruto-kun, but just because he's taken the hidden detail off of you doesn't mean he won't stop watching you. He's the leader of the entire village. He has to have some sort of ability to oversee said village. Yoko warned him. Naruto mentally nodded, accepting the helpful advice from Yoko. He wiped the smirk from his face and walked out the apartment. Good morning, Naruto-kun. The blonde smiled as the voice of his neighbor ringed in his ears. Despite how he felt when he first went to his old apartment, the tenant inside was extremely nice. He had forgot there were good people in the village. That small percentage spurred him to achieve the goal he had in mind. Instead of walking a different path the larger percentage nearly had him on. Good morning to you too, Kaidi-chan. The blonde said, giving her a friendly bow. So, only 1 more year, huh? The revealed 17-year-old said, wearing a dark brown blouse with a thick black obi belt. The shirt was low cut, allowing her large C-cup a lot of breathing room. Her dark green chunin vest was unzipped all the way. Her skin-tight dark brown pants really accented her bottom curves. Black ninja sandals along with her hip pouch and shuriken holster on her right leg completed her look. It was very obvious by the way she dressed that she used her various assets to distract while she fought. It was very distracting for any male to fight her or even talk to her. Classic kunoichi. Kaidi was an orphan like many others in the village. Though her parents' death wasn't caused by Yoko's attack 11 years ago. They got murdered and were murdered like the civilians they were. They would be proud of how strong their little girl was becoming. Naruto flashed her a grin as he bounced on the balls of his feet in excitement. Yeah, 1 more year to go. Who knows, maybe we'll end up doing a mission together, he said, flashing her a larger smile. Kaidi returned his smile and put her left hand on her hip while wagging the index finger on her Nara, you have to actually pass the exams first. Focus on that, she said, walking closer. Naruto chuckled as he pointed at her head. You forget something. Kaidi stopped and patted her head, feeling the towel she forgot to remove. She giggled and removed the towel, shaking her head a little in the process. Don't want to run around the village with that on my head. she said, taking her Konoha forehead protector from her chunin vest and tying it around her head. She shook her naturally curly hair a little more and a single curly bang bounced over her forehead. Better? She asked. Naruto openly gaped and drooled at his neighbor, his cheeks covered by his blush. He chuckled and rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. Perfect, he said, soft enough for her to barely hear. The brunette let out a giggle and kissed the blonde on top of his head. You're just too cute, she said before gasping. You better hurry or you're going to be late for your breakfast, she said, releasing his head from her grasp. You know it's only polite for ladies to go first. Go on and get your mission first. The blonde smiled brightly. Hayden returned her hands to her hips. You just want to see my rear. What did I tell you about peeping on me? She said, being the only one to know about his bloodline. She only knew because she caught him using it to obviously peep on her. Naruto put his hands behind his back and rolled on the balls of his feet innocently. To never peek on you while you're in the shower, he droned monotonously. Though I haven't been caught a second time yet, the blonde said, raising his hands in defense. Quicker than expected, she moved to hit Naruto upside the head. She wasn't surprised when her hand swiped through a cloud of gray smoke. Naruto chuckled a bit, thankful he knew her that well. She might not entirely look it, but that girl was made for speed. She was faster than most chunins and half the age, and her stealth was almost on par with his own, and that's saying something. Naruto laughed as the breeze onto a nearby rooftop. You almost got me there. I still think you should take the Jonin exam soon, he said before she stuck her tongue out at him in a very childish manner. She thought about what he said and scoffed. You know, I still need to learn another element and get recommendations from 5 active Jonins before I could even take the actual exam, she said, again putting her hands on her hips. Naruto smirked. You know, you can get recommendations anytime you want, and you should try something that will complement your lightning style like water. It's very fluid, he said, winking at her before bounding off towards his destination. Kaidi shook her head at the perverted little boy. She thought about what he said again before following his example and bounding towards the giant red building for her mission. L and F. Naruto's smile instantly dropped when he landed in the streets. It was how it was for the whole year. It wasn't like he was sad or anything. It was just that his destination had him going through a league of villages that hated him. There was the occasional villager that smiled and hollered him a good morning. He'll instantly smile back and return the gesture, only to promptly return his face to indifference. Luckily, this time he wasn't heading for breakfast. No, he had something just a teeny bit more important than food. The only problem was that he didn't know exactly where he was supposed to go. Fortunately, he didn't let that tidbit of information discourage him. There was no place he couldn't infiltrate. I think it's around here somewhere, Naruto thought, stopping in the middle of the road. It was still very early in the morning, so the streets weren't as full as they would be by 8 o'clock. He turned right down an alley. The alley was nearly pitch black, but his eyes quickly adjusted to the lack of light. He continued to navigate through the corridor-like area, getting small specks of light here and there before he bumped into a dead end. He brushed his hand along the wall with a straight face. He had to do it slowly or else he might miss a definite crack. This is going to take forever, Naruto whined in his mind. Stop whining and just concentrate, Yoko said with a yawn. The blonde's retort was cut off when he found the sweet spot. He grinned as his body dissolved into smoke and he slithered into the crack. He spent a few minutes as smoke, just breezing through cracks after cracks. He moved further and further down south to his destination. He appeared in an open area on his 5th minute. He was very high up, but yet was so low below. When he reached the ground and materialized, he stretched his back. I knew I wasn't as close as I thought I was. I almost got lost. He groaned in frustration before his stomach growled. And I'm hungry, he whined, crying anime tears as he walked forward. The area was a larger than realized room, complete with a concrete bridge. Said bridge loomed over an even more dark pit. 4 maroon-colored pillars connected the bridge together, 2 on both sides. 2 dim lights were also situated on both sides of the bridge, resting atop 2 high, gray-colored arches. Naruto looked up to see only a few streaks of light, but they didn't seem to reach the ground. He looked around more and noticed that he had walked to the middle of the bridge. He stopped and really surveyed his surroundings. He couldn't help but notice all the people around him. They weren't really that visible to the eye, but he had a sixth sense about that kind of thing. That, and he was in his initial Jinchuriki form to better see in the ungodly amount of darkness surrounding him. Each of the stalkers were wearing a pitch black cloak to better blend into the darkness, but they stupidly wore gray masks. That small little detail was enough to tip the blonde off about their exact positions. Why is so many people around me? The blonde whined loudly. The blonde quit his complaining when the faint sounds of a cane hitting concrete reached his ears. Ah, the boy has finally arrived. I see here is and has recalled your hidden babysitters. An aging man said, coming up from behind Naruto, stopping just a few meters away. Naruto's eyes returned to normal as he turned around. The first thing he noticed was the bandages covering the top of the man's head, leaving only his left eye uncovered. The second thing was the X-shaped scar on his chin. He only paid attention to that was because it looked cool on the weathered face. He was wearing a black cloak over a white shirt. The right side of his body was gone, but Naruto's observant eyes picked up the slight lump there. There wasn't there the last time we seen him. Yoko spoke inside Naruto's mind. The blonde respectfully bowed to the elder. Yes, it took him too long in my regards. I would be lying if I said I wasn't happy when I didn't sense his ambu this morning. He said, crossing his arms while keeping his eyes on the mysterious man. You're a very observant boy, for one so young. I wouldn't be surprised if very soon you surpass your master. My subordinate never seemed to get all that stronger, no matter how much he altered his body. The elder said, saying the word altered with an unsure tone. He wasn't sure that was the right word for the man's situation. But he couldn't outright judge the man. The blonde accepted the praise, only returning a bow in thanks. Perhaps you would care for a new master and join my organization. I can already see that you're highly skilled, maybe even more than some of the subordinates surrounding you. But even with your hidden strength, you're still leagues away from reaching my level. The elder spoke with a truthful tone behind his piercing eyes. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the gears in his mind began working for an answer. Remember why you came here. Think of your end game. The angered words of Yoko spoke loudly in his mind. Naruto knew why she was a little angry, but he didn't let that affect him. He kept his arms crossed as he pulled all the knowledge he had on the two men, comparing his sensei to the man in front of him. It took him a while, but the man in front of him was too mysterious for his liking. He didn't know of his strengths or weaknesses, but he still had something he wanted. Now, just wasn't the time to acquire it though. He had to admit that he still had some years of information gathering and training before he could take it. Sorry Danzo-sama, but I can't accept the offer. I'm too far into the light to vanish into the dark. I hope this doesn't affect the reason for my presence in Konoha. Naruto spoke, uncrossing his arms to bow apologetically to the elder. Danzo watched the boy bow with narrowed eyes. Yes, of course. I understand completely. Perhaps we should get to business then. The man said, turning to walk back to his office. The blonde slowly followed, retuning his senses to his surroundings, remembering its layout and the number of route agents surrounding him. L and F, 2 hours passed before Naruto was seen on the streets again. He emerged from the same dark alley from before with a thoughtful look on his face. Well, it seems everything's falling together rather well, don't you think? Yoko asked in a content tone, suggesting that she was happy he wasn't down there anymore. Naruto nodded slowly while he walked to the academy. He only had 10 minutes before it started. Usually he would be there far earlier, but he spent longer than he thought he would underneath Konoha. A little too well if you ask me. I don't know what that old man was thinking, but it doesn't seem good. Naruto thought, sighing in frustration. He's been analyzing the elder the entire meeting, but all he could pick up was that he ran route. There was no indication of what his skills could be, though that bandaged head was the real reason he was hesitant about becoming an operative. He had no idea what was underneath, but the longer he spent around him, the more opportunities he had of finding out in the worst way possible. You can always return to ask that man if you really want the information. It seems he and Danzo have more history than previously imagined. Though, if you ask me, I think it's a little obvious what under the bandages. Judging from how heavily that area is bandaged compared to when we last seen him, I would say that he's hiding something instead of simply covering an old wound. Yoko spoke analytically. The same could be said for the bulge under his robe. She added after a quick second. The blonde could see the academy building in the distance and smiled softly. I'm glad I have you sealed in me, Yoko. I can always rely on you for anything, Naruto told the kitsune before a squeal of delight erupted in his ear. At first, the blonde thought it was Yoko, and it was. But he also noticed that there was a second set of squealing lungs that seemed to get more intense. His instincts took over and he substituted with a nearby villager. A crash was heard from where Naruto previously stood. A short, platinum blonde girl screamed in terror as she collided with an old woman. I'm so sorry. She continued to apologize as she peeled herself off the lady. This girl was Ino Yamanaka, and she had a fixation with her blonde counterpart. Naruto became friends with the girl to her delight because he had to frequent the Yamanaka house every few weeks. Since it wasn't safe to go inside the blonde's head to forcefully learn the truth, Hiruzen felt therapy was the next best thing and assigned Inoiki to the task of temporary therapist. The friendship didn't happen immediately though. It actually kind of happened by accident. It took a total of 3 months, 6 visits before Naruto made the mistake that began to slowly change his outlook on things. Flashback. 9 months ago, Naruto groaned mentally after finishing another pointless therapy session. His persistence is annoying. He's not going to learn anything important, so why does he even try? The blonde thought, heading towards the front door of the medium-sized 2-story home flower shop. He reached for the doorknob when it suddenly flew open and hit him in the face. We're home, too, San. A loud feminine voice yelled with happiness. Meanwhile, the whiskered blonde's hands flew to his face and he groaned in pain. 2 sets of gasps were heard as small hand touched his cheek. I'm so sorry, Naruto-kun. I didn't think you were still here. The same young voice said much closer to Naruto's left ear. I'll go get the first aid kit. Another, more mature, feminine voice spoke with footsteps moving further away from them. Naruto only realized a hand was on his cheek at that moment. He abruptly brushed her hand off his skin while standing to his feet. He then looked at the girl. She was what any 10-year-old would look like. She had short platinum blonde hair that reached her shoulders with a navy blue hair clip on the left side of her forehead. She was wearing a purple dress with white blossomed flowers all around it. Her blue eyes held no pupils and it fit her amazingly. She was Ino Yamanaka, daughter to Inoiki Yamanaka and Irene Yamanaka. Naruto scoffed then winced when she touched the noticeable bump on his forehead. It was still fresh, so it throbbed nastily. Does it hurt? She asked softly. Again, Naruto brushed her hand off and turned. It's fine. It'll go down in a while, he said, keeping his attitude aloof and uncaring. Ino quickly ran in front of the other blonde and puffed her cheeks in indignation. She harshly poked the lump and frowned at Naruto's yelp. You are not fine. Now sit down and I'll wrap that in a bandage, she said, both angry and concerned. Naruto gulped and he quickly did as he was told. There was only 2 other females that would give him a look like that. This little girl was scarier than he thought. Ino came back with a small container at that moment. She gave a soft smile at the 2 young blondes and quickly ran up the stairs to her waiting husband. Ino set the container down and quietly opened it and sifted through its contents. Naruto quietly watched as she slowly looked through the first aid kit. She seemed to deliberately be going slow because he could easily see where the gauze was under the adhesive bandages. He could still feel his bump throbbing slightly on his head. Usually it would have healed instantly since it wasn't that much of a wound. Only then did he realize that Yoko wasn't giving it any attention. Sensing she was caught, Yoko audibly giggled. Can you blame me, Naru-kun? She's just so adorable. Let's have her heal this one. You don't want her to be sad to you? She asked, tone suggesting that she was pouting. A vision of Yoko's cute pouting face flashed in his mind. He released an audible sigh and mumbled, I should have left through the back door. He would have preferred to have simply turned into smoke, but he was being watched constantly by Anbu. The female blonde giggled lightly at his comment, causing Naruto to blush in embarrassment at her soft laughter. She finally found what she was looking for and held a bottle to Naruto's forehead. She sprayed the alcohol on the lump, making Naruto wince at the stinging sensation not used to it. She then cut a large square of gauze before pressing it against his lump. Then she used tape to keep it in place. Overall, the whiskered blonde looked goofy with a giant white X on his forehead, but at least she was finished. That's it? He asked, flashing her a thankful smile. Ino blushed while returning his smile with one of her own. That should be enough. Just leave it there for a few hours. She said curiously, looking over the rest of his body. It was completely wrapped in other bandages, and yet he walked around with 100% mobility. She knew he wasn't injured in any other way, so why was there so many bandages? Why do you have so many bandages wrapped around your body? She couldn't help but ask. The Uzumaki chuckled before standing up. He knew she was going to ask him that since her father asked the same question. He flicked her nose and watched as she gasped and quickly covered it. That's a secret, Ino Asakina. Nosy Ino. She puffed her cheeks again. Then I'll just go in your mind and find out myself. She said, holding her hands in her clan's unique hand seal. I wouldn't do that, Naruto said, his ears picking up twin sets of soft gasps. He knew by that they now knew that he knew about the QB inside of him. Why? Because it's an invasion of your privacy. She asked smugly, her fingers ready to do a technique she had just began learning. Yes, that, but also because friends don't do that to each other. He said as her eyes lit up. I mean, Naruto said, realizing his mistake, and groaned when he was suddenly wrapped in a hug. So we're friends? She asked, her eyes resembling twinkling stars. Naruto groaned and tried to walk to the door, but her arms didn't release the grip. I thought you only liked the devastated Sasuke-kun. Naruto said in a mocking tone, not really knowing why he was doing it. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that Sasuke was a little, he doubted he was like this before his clan was wiped out a year prior. It wasn't that much of a secret that Ino had been crushing on the brooding, enigmatic Sasuke. Then it changed when the even more mysterious blonde started going to the academy 3 months ago. Naruto noticed the other blonde looked down a little and thought. He could see that she was fighting something in her subconscious. He released a sigh. Fine, I'll be your friend, he said, unknowingly blushing. Ino was knocked out of her reprieve by that and started squealing in happiness. What the hell just happened? End flashback. Ino snapped her fingers in front of Naruto's face with a mean glare directed at Naruto. Why do you always do that? She questioned, so annoyed by how many times that's happened. The male blonde rubbed the back of his head and tried to calm her down. Sorry, Ino-chan. I keep forgetting, he said, smiling softly at her. The girl was wearing a purple vest-like blouse with a raised collar that seemed to bunch a bit around her neck. The vest was also short and showed her bandaged midriff. A matching purple skirt that had the side slit showed her bandaged thighs. The bandages stopped just above her knees to allow her full mobility. Her arms were covered by white and purple elbow warmers, since they only seemed to cover her elbows. And 4 more inches in both directions. Also, she was wearing a pair of violet sandals. She suddenly smiled and just as quickly wrapped her arms around his waist. She laughed at his straight face. Every time, Naruto screamed in his head. I blame you, Yoko. Naruto directed his blame to his tenant. The kitsune just laughed, accepting the full blame. Tell me something I don't know, she said in between giggles. All right, Ino, I see how you are, Naruto said, frowning before he hung his head and resumed walking to the academy. Ino didn't know how, but next thing she knew, she wasn't holding anything. In her surprise, she quickly reached for the other blonde's arm, but he took a big step and she missed. She was now falling to the floor, but was unsurprisingly caught by Naruto. Don't go falling in this dirt. I don't want you to ruin your outfit, he said with a soft chuckle. He set her back onto her feet and quickly released her body when he noticed just where one of his hands were. Fortunately, this time she found her footing, so she didn't nearly eat dirt this time. She tightly hugged Naruto's arm to show her thanks. Thank you, Naruto-kun. You're so much better than Sasuke-san, she said as they resumed their walk to the academy. Naruto rolled his eyes at the obvious statement. Well, duh, he said with only about 3 more minutes left until class started. Hokage's office. He exhales inside into his pipe before exhaling a large plume of smoke. His thoughts turned to Naruto. When he was gone, my goal was to find him. Now that he's in the village, I feel that he shouldn't be. This is so exhausting, he mentally yelling, feeling frustrated. He sifted thoughtlessly those some worthless documents. Whatever happened in the past 5 years changed the boy drastically. Maybe I have to consider the possibility that he's more than mentally damaged. He thought again for about the millionth time. He removed his team of Anbu from the boy's shadow and decided to watch him personally. but he lost him when he strolled into an extremely dark alley. His view orb wasn't able to penetrate the darkness. He couldn't even get a lock on his chakra signature, and that was saying something. It wasn't like him to lose somebody, but he just couldn't locate the scrambled signature. He had to think of a way to get the blonde to reveal what he knew, because he knew the boy was lying. He might have to take drastic measures to find the truth. He knew from the reports he received from the Anbu that the boy did the same things every day. He'll wake up an hour or two before dawn. That alone told him that he's had training to be able to wake up so early. His morning ritual was the same. Do a few push-ups and sit-ups to fully wake himself up before showering and brushing his teeth. Then he'll get dressed and head outside and on occasions talk to his young neighbor. After a while, she'll remind him of his need for breakfast, in which he'll eat at either a sushi restaurant, barbecue, or the ramen shop, mostly the ramen shop. After breakfast, he'll jog to the academy for future shinobi, where he'll simply sit there with a bored expression on his face. The squad were insightful enough that they could tell from his runs to the academy that he could clearly move faster. After class, he would head home and lay down in the bed, sleeping for a few hours. After waking up around 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the evening, he would head to the library for an hour or until it closed. The books were basic and was mostly for learning how to control chakra and furthering your control over it. He was also reading a short book that explained how to learn of your affinity and explained the exercises needed to strengthen each of the individual elements. That book was a lot more advanced, but he allowed him to read it, feeling that he was just a genius in the making. About twice a month, he would head to the Yamanaka house for his mandatory therapy session, since going into his mind was extremely dangerous. 3 months into the sessions, he befriended their only daughter, Ino. When they became friends, they started doing things together all the time. Hiruzen was happy that Naruto found a friend in the young girl, but couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't changing. He was soon knocked from his thoughts when someone entered his office. Mission accomplished, Hokage-sama. A lazy voice echoed in the old man's ears. The Sandaime rose his head to see his most infamous elite jonin. Kakashi stood with his personalized air of aloofness. One hand was in his pocket, while the other held his precious hentai book he was all too familiar with. Hiruzen smiled as an idea popped in his mind. Ah, Kakashi-san, just the man I wanted to see. The old man said, hiding his smirk with his hands. Hours passed and Naruto sighed in relief. He immediately began exiting the ground to get his lunch. Come on, Naruto. Wait for me, Ino said a few feet behind the blonde. Naruto chuckled while turning his head. You know me, Ino. This is where we split up for a few hours. I'll meet you at your house, okay? Naruto said, frowning at her pout. I'll help you with the clone jutsu when I get there, okay? He told her, patting her on her head. Ino smiled and nodded before she sprinted to her house. Naruto chuckled at her depart. Iruka had informed the class that they were now going to get ready for the graduation and thus had to learn the 3 basic techniques required for the ninja skill portion of the class. When the blonde realized that they took an entire year to learn the most basic techniques, he couldn't help but scoff at the absurdness. It didn't even take him a week to learn all 3 of the techniques. Naruto was nearly off the academy grounds when Sasuke stood in his path. What do you want, Sasuke? Don't you have a lost family to grieve for? Naruto spoke harshly while brushing past the young Uchiha. Said Uchiha narrowed his eyes and clenched his fists in anger. He had blocked the blonde's path with the intent of asking for a friendly spar, but now he wanted a bloody battle. Now that I think about it, that clan was known for their Sharingan eyes. Where's yours at? Naruto asked, turning his head to smirk crazily at the raven-haired boy. Sasuke's anger was frozen at the look in the blonde's eyes. A shiver shot through his entire spine as he witnessed his death at the hands of the blonde in front of him. His body exploded in a shower of blood and bones. It was like he was watching himself in third person, watching himself die multiple times in a loop. Naruto returned his head forward, his face back to normal, as Sasuke dropped to his knees. Naruto resumed walking away when Sasuke screamed into the sky, shocking the surrounding people. Iruka, the Chunin sensei for their class, ran toward the screaming boy and quickly dropped to his knees. Other than the long cut going horizontally through the bridge of his nose, he wasn't all that special from the other Chunins. What happened, Sasuke-kun? By then, Sasuke had already curled into himself, trying to make himself as small as possible. His hands were around his stomach while eyes were shut tightly. The boy's scream only seemed to increase in volume and pitch, forcing Iruka to cover his ears. He looked around for the source of the Uchiha's distress. The blonde standing in front of the approaching crowd made Iruka growl. Naruto flashed him a smirk before he was engulfed by the approaching crowd. What did he do? The Iruka continued to growl hatefully. Sasuke suddenly calmed down, but remained in his position. It wasn't until he opened his eyes did he realize the position he was in. He flinched and immediately ripped himself from Iruka's comforting hold. His ears didn't pick up the gasps coming from the man or the surrounding people as he ran home as fast as he could. XXXL and FXXXX. Naruto smirked as the screams of the young Uchiha pierced through the village. That's almost as loud as Bubblegum's regular speaking voice. He muttered, ducking between all of the villages in his path. Don't you think that was a little unnecessary? Yoko inquired from inside Naruto's dome. It only took the blonde a second to think of the answer. Absolutely. It's better if he has the Sharingan now rather than later. At least I think that was life-threatening enough to give him the dojutsu. Naruto answered the female in his head. Naruto continued walking until he reached a vacant training ground. He didn't care to check which one specifically. He only cared that it was empty. He walked to the center of the training ground when his senses flared to life. Hello, is anyone here? He yelled, playing the part of an ignorant academy student. You do know these grounds are off limits to civilians, even if they are going to a school for the chance of becoming a shinobi. A manly voice spoke from beyond the tree linings. Naruto quickly turned, widening his senses as he continued to turn to look for his stalker. I'm sorry, I wasn't watching where I was going. Naruto yelled in apology. Mama, you don't have to lie to me. The voice spoke again with a bit of a lazy tone. Naruto mentally cursed. This guy is smart to have clearly seen THT. And he still hasn't revealed himself, the blonde thought. I'm not lying, mister. He yelled, showing frustrated anger. Yes, you are. I know all about you, Naruto Uzumaki. I know all of your secrets and I even know secrets you don't even know are secrets. The man said, his voice still projecting itself all around the clearing. An obvious bluff, Yoko assured the blonde, feeling irritated herself at the gall of this man. That doesn't surprise me coming from a big-time ninja man. Naruto played along, wanting to see where this would go. Good. Then you should know I saw what you did to the young Uchiha. The voice said, making Naruto's eyes widen a bit. I have to say, I was quite surprised to see you knew that technique. Tisk tisk tisk, Naruto-kun. I would have expected better from you if you hadn't changed during your time away from the village. The man said again, as if knowing what happened during the blonde's time away. Naruto's eyes widened more. You know what happened to me? The blonde asked, completely ignoring the other part of the lecture. Can you please tell me? I'm scared I'll never know what happened. Naruto said, constantly turning, trying to pinpoint the location of the mysterious man. Silence washed over the clearing. Naruto had stopped his spinning to drop to his knees to sell his act and because he was getting dizzy. This guy is extremely skilled to be able to conceal his chakra to this degree. I can't even locate a sliver of a signature out there. Yoko said as she too scanned the foliage for the man. Just keep checking. Nobody could hide from you for long. The blonde told the woman before he heard her grunt, knowing she nodded her head. Naruto too sent out his senses, scanning for anything out of the ordinary. He couldn't really do anything since he wanted to retain his enigmatic background. Hello, are you still there? Naruto yelled, mentally berating himself for being in this situation. The blonde could still feel eyes upon him, but it felt like they were 360 degrees all around him. Damn it all, the blonde thought, hating that he couldn't see who it was. Soft laughter echoed through the clearing. Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry about that. I'll show myself to you now. After that was said, a man walked into the clearing. He was wearing the standard attire for a Jonin rank shinobi of Konoha. Not to mention he was reading an orange-covered book, but that wasn't the most surprising thing about the man. It was the slanted headband covering his left eye. This man was one of Konoha's most legendary shinobi, Sharingan no Kakashi. Naruto didn't physically widen his eyes, but he knew this wasn't looking good. Damn, anybody but him. Out of all the Jonins this village has, it had to be the strongest of them all. Who are you? He asked, taking a cautious step back. Kakashi's lone eye informed Naruto the man was smiling. I think you already know, Naruto-kun, but if it makes you feel better, I'll tell you. I am Kakashi Hatake. I've come to require some much-needed information out of you, the Scarecrow said, closing his book with an air of seriousness around him. Naruto showed confusion at the implications. Inside he was thinking of what to say. The answer came within seconds. I don't know if you realize it, you know, being half-blind and everything, but I'm only 11. What could I possibly tell you that you don't already know? After all, you told me yourself you know everything about me. Even things I have no knowledge of, you do. The whiskered blonde said in a single breath, surprising Yoko, himself, and most importantly, Kakashi with his retort. Silence again filled the clearing as each party stared at one another. Naruto was busy giving himself a pat on the back before Kakashi suddenly smiled. He let out a soft chuckle. I guess you're right. Naruto's face faltered at the man's reply. Excellent job, Naruto-kun. You caught him in his own lie. I taught you well, Yoko spoke proudly. Impressive to catch that. I knew you were far smarter for your age. That's why I have to apologize for what I'm about to do. Kakashi said, lifting his headband, revealing his famed Sharingan eye. Why do you have two different colored eyes? Are you going to train, too? Naruto asked while mentally gulping. He hoped that if he stayed in his innocent act, it would quench the man's suspicions. He was strong, but not strong enough to defeat Kakashi. If the two fought, it would only be a matter of time before Naruto fell, especially if he wasn't using his full capabilities. The silver-haired Jonin ignored the boy's words and ran forward, only moving at Chunon's speed. Naruto yelped and ran for the safety of the forest. Suddenly, Kakashi appeared in front of him and swung in a backhand. The blonde's reflexes took over and he baseball slid under the moving appendage. He righted his footing and dashed into the trees at full Genin speed. What the hell is happening? Either this man hates your guts, but respects you for some reason, hence the polite behavior. Or he's trying to test you for an unknown reason. Or he could really be trying to get a gauge of your abilities. Yoko informed as Naruto ducked under a high root, keeping his speed at high Genin. I don't like either of those. Naruto replied, looking back and ducking his head, narrowly evading a thrown kunai. Hey, stop that, Naruto yelled before grunting as a kick connected with his side. He skipped across the forest before he skidded along and stopped with a lone boulder against his back. Damn it, Naruto groaned as he held his right arm in pain. It wasn't broken, but he could tell there were fractures in 3 different places. This could spell trouble if you wish to remain inconspicuous to the village. Yoko yelled in anger, knowing he wanted to refrain from using his Kekkei Genkai in plain sight. Even if I was to fight back, I would still have problems. But you're right, I might as well fight back. I'll keep it at Genin level, no higher than that. My goal would be wasted if I die here. Naruto thought as a dozen shuriken flew towards him. Instantly a pair of custom knives appeared in his hands, one black and the other silver. For the first knife, it was easily 15 inches long. Starting from the handle, it was wrapped in pitch black leather, with a silver kanji engraved into that red ebony. The guard was special. On one side it curved upwards and on the other it curved downwards. The blade was black as well, with a silver strip going down the middle, separating the sharp ends of the blade. The silver knife had a reverse color scheme than the first. It also had the kanji for ivory on its handle. They were his favorite ladies, other than Yoko and Ino of course. He held them in reverse grip and batted away 2 of the approaching shurikens. He didn't know that if he had simply stayed sitting they would have harmlessly impacted the tree 3 feet above his head. Enough knowledge for basic storage seals, most likely sealed into your wrists. Above average speed for someone your age, along with incredible reflexes. Your tolerance for pain is high considering the damage that arm and ribs just went through. Kakashi spoke, stepping into the blonde's line of sight. It's quite obvious you've had training. From whom and to what extent is the question plaguing my mind. Kakashi added, ignoring the boy's angered growl. Use that brain of yours and think of a way to minimize the man's assumptions of who your sensei was. Yoko spoke, glaring at Kakashi through Naruto's eyes, both of them being mindful to not make eye contact with his implanted eye. Purposely avoiding eye contact. Again, you surprise me with your knowledge. Your sensei must have drilled into your head about the profound abilities this dojutsu possess. He or she must be Jonin and above. That narrows down the list considerably. Kakashi summarized again. Okay, since you want to know so badly, I'll show you what I know. Naruto said, his reasoning flying out the window. His hands flew through a series of basic hand seals. Knowing full well the man's implanted eye already deduced what he was up to. This is the only technique I know that fits me, Naruto said. Kirigakure no Jutsu, hidden in the mist technique. The blonde muttered, raising his left arm high in the air while keeping his right hand in front of his face. Both fingers forming half of the respective sides of the ram seal. It was an immediate process, but dark smoke began filling the area. It was as if there was a fire nearby. Naruto breathed deeply as he brought his left arm down to join the left. When they connected, he exhaled an even larger plume of smoke. Naruto directed the smoke straight down so that it would immediately consume him first before spreading outward. Kakashi narrowed his eyes. He's seen this technique before and it wasn't as dense as this smoke is. Plus it was easily darker. This couldn't possibly be the work of the surrounding water. It's way too dry, Kakashi said, shielding his face from the smoke speeding past his face. You might be making things worse, Yoko commented, knowing how he concealed the use of his bloodline with the guise that he was using Kiri's special technique. I'm not amazed that you could analyze what I'm doing, but you must realize that you don't know what's happening while I'm in this mist. Naruto's voice bounced throughout the smoke. A pair of cuts appeared along Kakashi's right arm, showing the Jonin that he was able to get as close to him as he wanted. Kakashi winced as he clutched his arm. The blonde hit places that weren't protected by his Jonin vest. A technique derived from Kirigakure. It brings the possibility that you spent time in the Mist Village. Or at least saw it in action to be able to emulate it for yourself. Kakashi stated, covering his Sharingan eye as it was pointless to have it uncovered since it couldn't pierce the chakra-laced SM. Okay. The scarecrow widened his senses, only able to use his hearing and danger sense. Speaking of his danger sense, it went off and he batted aside a projectile before it could pierce his neck. He couldn't clearly see what it was before it disappeared into the vapor, but he did notice it was bright blue. Again, he sensed danger and leapt to the side. Nearly immediately, he bumped into a tree and 2 air bullets impacted his vest, protecting his torso to a degree. He skidded along the ground, holding his chest in slight pain. He shook his head and released the direction disrupting genjutsu plaguing his mind. Lacing the smoke with a genjutsu shows another one of your abilities. Also, your style of fighting me shows how you could fight, but I want to see more. Before Kakashi could even form a single hand seal, he pivoted his body and blocked the ivory knife. Kakashi could clearly see the top half of Naruto's body, along with the arm he was attacking with. He was glad he had metal-plated gloves on or he would be down a hand. The Jonin showed his expertise by quickly pushing the blade to the left while he spun and roundhouse kicked the blonde back into the dense smoke. A splat noise was heard and Kakashi looked down to barely see a glob of blood. He bent and wiped it with his finger. Guess what, Naruto-kun? Kakashi started, knowing the blonde was immediately regretting attacking the way he did. No response was given as Naruto righted himself before he crashed into the tree. He landed feet first and used chakra to cushion his impact. The medium-sized tree still broke and Naruto skidded while the tree toppled on its side. Naruto held his stomach and cursed at the Jonin's goading. I'm leaving this place, Naruto thought, spitting out another glob of blood, before he turned tail and ran. I have your scent, Kuchio's Doten Suiga no Kiba. Fang pursuit, the blonde heard before multiple tremors were felt under the ground. Naruto cursed as he was forced to stop before 2 small dogs shot out of the ground in front of him. He acted fast and kicked one away and slashed at the other. He didn't get to see the results of his defense before 3 more small dogs shot out on his right while 2 moderately bigger dogs shot on his left. Survival instincts took over and his body was surrounded by smoke. The dogs crashed into each other as Naruto formed meters away from them. When he was fully formed, a far larger dog shot out behind him, going straight for his neck. Naruto cursed again as he did a front flip and kicked the dog in its jaw. The momentum the large canine was already going and the force of Naruto's kick caused it to overshoot the blonde and crash into a tree front of them. Multiple yelping filled the blonde's ears as he ran in a new direction. Dogs. Naruto yelled as the barking grew closer to him. They're summons. If you injure them enough, they'll dispel back to their own plane of existence. Yoko barked in anxiety. You could always use this fight to push yourself further beyond your abilities. So that next time you see him, you can defeat him. The young blonde knew damn well she wasn't referring to Kakashi. He knew exactly who she was talking about. You're right. I'll never get stronger if I don't push myself. Naruto replied. He had to quickly skid to a halt when Kakashi suddenly appeared in front of him with a concealed smile beneath his mask. It didn't take the academy student long to realize that he was biding his dog's time to catch up. Naruto growled and dashed straight at the man. He threw a straight right and was thoroughly surprised that it connected, resulting in the man to disappear in a burst of smoke. Clone. Naruto muttered in disbelief as growls made themselves known all around the blonde. Naruto looked around to see 7 of the previous 8 dogs. Not far away was Kakashi leaning against a tree. If you want to survive, you have to show me more of your skills. Otherwise, you're going to be ripped to shreds, he said before flipping open the same book from before. Naruto glared at the silver-haired bastard, clenching his fist around each of his custom knives. He yelled as the canines charged. XXXL and FXXX. Naruto groaned over the shoulder of the scarecrow who was carrying him. Blood stained his clothes through the long gashes in his skin. The most intense ones were nearly closed by the time they arrived at the hospital. Naruto had given Yoko an order to only heal the life-threatening gashes. He needed some time to think and an excuse to be in the hospital. The residential nurses shrieked at the amount of blood dripping freely through some of Naruto's wounds. Though they were moving at slow paces, nearly immediately the staff moved into action and Naruto was soon carted into one of the emergency rooms. They were going to work on cleaning the wounds before closing them. One of the doctors stayed out and grilled Kakashi about what happened. It was training gone wrong. You know how the younger generation is. They love to push themselves further beyond their own abilities. Kakashi said before he started leaving. That kid isn't even a genin yet. The doctor yelled at the jonins retreating back. Hokage's office. Kakashi went straight to the Hokage when he left the hospital. The trip only took him a matter of minutes. I'm sure you watched the entire thing, Hokage-sama. What do you think? That was the first thing to come out of the jonin's mouth when he entered the office. True to the man's word, a crystal ball was placed in the middle of the desk in front of the old man. Yes, I saw everything. I knew there was something the blonde was hiding. I've had that feeling since the first day he returned to the village. You were right to use that amount of force. He's clearly changed, Hiruzen said gravely as he stood. He looked torn. Not even a smoke would have calmed his nerves. Exactly. The boy that left this village is not the same one that returned. But look on the bright side. Kakashi spoke with that same concealed smile. Hiruzen slowly turned his narrowed eyes to look the jonin in the eye. What the hell could be bright about this situation? He asked with an angry undertone. The smile never left the jonin's masked face. Somebody already started his training. If we were to get him to come to our side, it would surely disappoint whoever brainwashed the boy in the first place. Hiruzen's face stayed the same as he continued to stare at the other man. You better explain what's going on through that mind of yours. If you hadn't realized, that's impossible after what just happened. Hiruzen yelled in anger as he finally grabbed his pipe. It seemed the smile on the jonin's face widened in length. Because I know who trained him. Hiruzen took a long drag of his pipe before exhaling a puff of smoke. Pray tell. Back in the hospital, Mindscape. Naruto slept in the infirmary. The doctors had already worked on closing his nearly healed cuts. It only took them 10 minutes to complete their task. It already being nearly done helped them a lot. That was at least an hour ago and Naruto was busy in his mind talking to Yoko, thinking of a game plan. They didn't think that someone would seriously pick a fight with them like that. It would have been better if it was simply a chunin. The demoness wasn't mad at him for revealing the small amount of skill he had. It was his instincts that intervened when he needed them most. That's what most fights were. Relying on your instincts to survive. Naruto groaned as he pulled back a bright blue string of a bright blue bow, both being made of his own chakra. He released it and launched the 300th arrow over the lake in front of him. The bow was a full meter long and was fully adaptable since it was made from chakra. As the arrow traveled over the lake, a small fissure split apart the lake. Yoko stood on the other end of the half-mile wide lake. She watched as the thin arrow impacted the boulder right in the middle of the bull's eye that was painted on it, causing it to split vertically. Great. You certainly have gotten better this past year. Though you still need work. What did I tell you? She asked while repairing the boulder as the arrow slowly dematerialized. Naruto sighed, having heard as if he was right next to her. You said I needed to work on making it so that the lake doesn't get affected at all. Naruto recited for the 100th time. Exactly. I can easily tell you're only focusing on accuracy right now. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Considering everything would be pointless if you couldn't hit the broadside of a barn if you were right next to it. She said, giving him the signal to continue. Yes, I know. You told me that already. The blonde said, pulling back the light blue chakra string, creating another arrow. Blood was seeping through his fingers at the amount of exertion he was going through for pulling pure chakra the vast amount of times. He has, but I can't seem to launch an arrow that isn't detectable. Naruto said, release the similarly blue arrow. Again, it flew over the water, making it part slightly before it pierced the boulder's new bull's eye. Yoko noticed the water parted slightly higher than the previous. She didn't have to question the reason for his small setback. She knew that he was still thinking about the fight and how he could have done it different. She couldn't lie to herself and say she wasn't thinking about the same thing. Why the hell did he attack? It couldn't be some sort of test. I don't really think it was out of hatred. I sense no malice. She thought with her gloved hand on her chin. She thought of one thing. If she was in Naruto's shoes, she would have just killed him and left. But the blonde didn't have her strength. Oh. Wait, I think I know. She thought out loud after Naruto shot 2 more arrows. Know what? Naruto said as his chakra bow dissipated into the air. He checked his bandaged fingers. Blood continued to drip through the red-coated wrappings. This was the price he had to pay for continuous exposure to pure chakra. The blonde winced when he tried to move the fingers, but the pain was already dulling down. Yoko had crossed the lake by then and reached for Naruto's hand. He was naturally left-handed, but she was making him learn with both hands like her. She coated both the index and middle fingers with her chakra and watched as the small lacerations closed. I figured out the reason why Kakashi attacked you. It makes the most sense. Naruto rose an eyebrow and leaned against the nearest tree. Is it that the sand aim finally cracked and ordered his most infamous Jonin to attack the extremely mysterious academy student? Naruto asked as a stream of smoke escaped from his mouth. Yoko's mouth was open in surprise. She didn't think the blonde would figure it out before her. She closed her mouth after a minute and gave him a smile. He was starting to use that brain of his. When did you figure it out? She asked, leaning beside him. Naruto slid down the bark of the tree with Yoko following suit. Another stream of smoke left his mouth as he got situated on the ground. He looked up to the sky and blew out another stream of smoke. After I shot my 117th arrow. I guess it's obvious that the old man knows about us now. He obviously doesn't know about the details like he wanted, but I'm sure he knows just who abducted you all those years ago. Yoko explained. Naruto nodded. There's also the chance that Kakashi got a peek under the bandages. I remember being slashed across the chest and bit along the arms. Naruto said. Though he was proud he was able to successfully defeat all the dogs even with the restrictions he placed on himself. He has up to 2 choices, maybe 3. He could either try to make you switch sides somehow, he could send that Anbu squad back and keep a closer eye on you, or he could seal your chakra forever and imprison you for life. I don't think I have to tell you which choice is the most reasonable of plays for you. Yoko said, standing to her feet. Where are you going? Naruto asked, standing as well. I'm sleepy. I'm going to bed. Let's just hope everything goes smoothly from this point on. She said, leaving with a yawn. Naruto watched her leave with color on his cheeks. He couldn't tear his eyes away from her rear, and he knew that she knew this by the way her hips swayed. He shook his head and decided he too should leave. He stood with new eyes. If Yoko was right, it was no longer time for him to creep around. But it also meant he couldn't frequent the root cellar like he intended for the next year. He frowned. It wasn't like he needed to. In truth, he just wanted to scope the place out and get a feel for it. His electric blue bow blazed to life and he pulled on its string. An arrow materialized and he immediately shot it across the lake. The lake was completely still as the arrow hastily flew over it. He smirked when he noticed this. That meant that it was nearly undetectable, being the lowest that was humanly possible. When the arrow impacted the boulder's bull's eye, it exploded in a shower of rocky shrapnel. It's time to stop hiding. I was meant to be in the open anyway. Naruto smirked as his body vanished from view. Konoha Hospital. Reality. Naruto immediately scanned the room and his face promptly scowled. I see you're finally awake. It took you long enough. Did you spend the entire time talking to Yoko-chan? A voice said to the blonde left. Naruto reluctantly opened his eyes and glared at his object of discomfort. What do you want, Kabuto? Kabuto Yakushi was a 17-year-old genin with ashen gray hair styled into a ponytail. A pair of circle-framed glasses was wore over his onyx-colored eyes. His attire consisted of a high-collared, dark purple shirt with a white undershirt. A pair of matching purple, fingerless gloves that covered his entire forearm, stopping just beneath the elbows. His pants were dark purple as well, and he was wearing the standard blue ninja sandals. His shuriken holster was on his right leg. A Konoha headband was around his forehead, keeping his bangs out of his eyes. The glasses-wearing teen smirked as he pushed his circle-framed glasses fully over his eyes. The lens shined maliciously as he chuckled. Don't be like that, Naruto-kun. I thought we were friends, brothers even. You thought wrong, you sadistic bastard. Naruto yelled as he sat up. Now, back to my original question. What do you want? Naruto questioned, clenching his new bandaged fists. I just wanted to see how you were doing. Is that such a bad thing? Kabuto chuckled his reply, a question of his own. Naruto growled and his electric blue arrow made its quick reappearance. He and arrow ready at the blink of an eye and held it to Kabuto's own eye. This is new, Kabuto simply said, staring into the slightly fluctuating chakra with interest. Two choices, Kabuto. Leave or spend the rest of the day reforming your head, if that's possible for you. Naruto said, knowing about Kabuto's amazing medical abilities. He wanted to find out if the team could regenerate after such intense damage. Kabuto continued to stare into Naruto's angry blue eyes. All right, Naruto-kun. I don't know what I did to make you hate me, but I'll back down for now. He said, taking a step back to prove his statement. The Jinchuriki continued to glare at the medic nin. He wasn't sure if he should let the teen off the hook. But you should know that since that was seen, he said, pointing at the area where Naruto's curse mark resided. Your cover has been blown. I'm quite shocked, really. I expected it be blown earlier, he said with a thought. At that moment, the doorknob rattled quickly. His weapon quickly disappeared and he put his hands down. Ino quickly barged into the tension-filled room, but she didn't know this. She worriedly ran to the hospitalized blonde's side. Oh, Kami, Naruto-kun, what happened? She immediately asked, showing her concern. Naruto frantically tried to remove Ino's hands from his face and body. Why are you in the hospital? Are you still hurt? Does this hurt? She continued to barrage him with questions. Ino, calm down, Naruto frantically yelled. Geez, you're acting like an overprotective girlfriend. Ino quickly grasped Naruto's face, held it firmly in her hands, and glared into his eyes. Her left cheek was puffed out a little. Naruto was still confused at the female blonde. Maybe that's what I want to be, she nearly yelled before quickly pressing her lips against his. It was a powerful kiss, chaste, but powerful nonetheless. Naruto's eyes were wide in surprise, and he didn't react at all. Ino ended the kiss with her face completely red. She dropped to her knees, completely embarrassed at her own actions. She continued to mutter apologies, softly touching her lips, while Naruto stared at her. The male blonde turned his eyes to the equally shocked Kabuto. This day was just full of surprises. Well, I left you a gift. When you find it, you'll quickly rethink my position as your enemy. Kabuto said as he left, laughing all the while, until an even louder shushing noise stopped him. Naruto didn't search for Kabuto's apparent gift, and just looked back at the apologizing girl who stole his first kiss. What are you two doing? A voice said at the doorway. Ino squeaked, as if she was caught doing something she wasn't supposed to be doing, and blushed even more. Naruto looked at the doorway to see the Hokage, the person he shoved to the back of his head due to recent events. Nothing at all, Hokage-sama. I was just leaving. Bye, Ino quickly said in one breath while she retreated back home. The blonde's eyes never left the eyes of the Hokage. Naruto, we need to talk, the old man said with a calculating face. Naruto allowed a frown to mar his face. I couldn't agree more. Hiruzen walked fully into the room, nearly slamming the door shut. All right, I'll start. I know you don't have amnesia. Your fight with Kakashi has proved as much. Now, fess up and give me any of your bullshit. The Sandaime ordered with a stern glare straight into Naruto's eyes. A cold shiver ran up Naruto's spine as the words were as cold as ice. He held his hand against his forehead and leaned back a little. You're right, Hiruzen. I do remember everything that happened these past 5 years. I confess that during that time, I went through rigorous training from my sensei, your former student, Orochimaru. This just seemed to confirm what Kakashi told him prior. Let me see your curse mark. Sarutobi ordered. The blonde nodded and reached for his chest. His previous undershirt had been ripped to shreds and was replaced by bandages. A few tugs later and his curse mark of earth was visible for the Hokage's eyes. Hiruzen widened his eyes at the unique seal. This was the second of Orochimaru's cursed seals he's seen, the other being on Anko Mitarashi. This one is different compared to the other one I've seen, he said, focusing on the design. Naruto nodded, closing his eyes. Yes, the heaven seal from Anko-san, Orochimaru's former apprentice. The one who refused Orochimaru's gift. I don't blame her for that, but I do hate that she doesn't use it. The power it gives you is magnificent, Naruto said with a smirk as he reopened his eyes. The Hokage couldn't doubt that the look in Naruto's eyes were shocking and terrifying to see in one who used to be filled with joy. He cleared his throat. So, it's really true. You were trained by the most dangerous ninja to defect from this village. You even have a summoning contract with snakes to prove the point even further, Hiruzen said with a hand absent-mindedly stroking his beard. Naruto mentally scoffed at that. Orochimaru wasn't the most dangerous. That title easily went to Itachi. I'm sensing but here the Hokage's features seem to soften. But that doesn't mean we have to be on opposite sides, the old man said, making the blonde mentally smirk. Nailed it perfectly, Yoko-chan, Naruto thought, closing his eyes in mock thought. Are you suggesting I betray the man that trained me, no matter how sadistic it was? That's kind of rude, don't you think? The blonde questioned, his eyes still closed while he's scratching his whiskered cheeks. The old man studied the young blonde. He had to play this close to the vest. He wanted to bring him over, not push him further away. I wouldn't say betray, more like return to your rightful side. You know damn well how evil he could be. I just hope I could save you, since I couldn't save him. There's still a chance to save you, the man said, glancing at the ground in remorse. Even though Naruto didn't have his eyes open, he could hear the absolute remorse in the leader's voice. I wouldn't call the man evil. After all, he did tell me who my parents were, Naruto said sternly while opening his eyes to look out the window. The gears in the Sandaime's brain worked to come up with a response. Considering what he knew about his old student, what would be the point in revealing the boy's heritage? There was no doubt he already knew about the Kyuubi, or it was possible that it was a trap from the blonde himself to get him to reveal the secret he's been wanting to know since before he was taken from him. If it was necessary for the blonde to know about his heritage so he could return to his side, it was worth it. Your father, the Minato Namikaze, would disapprove of you being around Orochimaru. And if I know your mother, Kushina Uzumaki, which I did, she would kill you herself, Hiruzen said, waiting for the blonde to be shocked and yell that he was the son of the fourth Hokage. Instead, the blonde simply smiled brightly. Was that so hard, Oji-san? Naruto said with tears welling in his eyes. Of course, he already knew this piece of information, but it was always nice to fool an old man. Hiruzen was surprised and hugged the young blonde who just broke down. He didn't know if it was real or fake, but he just allowed the boy to sob into his cloak. Naruto then proceeded to tell the Hokage about the atrocities he went through during Orochimaru's training and when he was given the cursed seal. The Sandaime deduced that it was real and consoled the child for half an hour before he fell asleep in his arms. Hospital. Hours later, Naruto woke up some odd hours later to see that it was still daylight out. Although the sun looked as if it was going to turn in for the night in another hour or so. For some reason Naruto felt a large weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He looked around the room to see that it was empty. Only an open window was to his right. He hopped off the bed and stretched his muscles. He then began to unwrap his bandages, revealing his toned torso. Both of his seals marked his body, and he slowly traced a finger over the cursed seal of earth. He noticed that it looked like someone had placed a seal around it. His eyes twitched. He didn't expect the wily old man to seal it like that. What the? Who does that while someone is sleeping? Naruto thought in anger as he watched in the mirror as the seal around it disintegrated completely. Luckily, it relied on the will of the user, so it was easy to break through. It was then that he remembered Kabuto's words. So he lifted both of his hands and studied them. He began unwrapping the tape from his right hand first. When he didn't find anything, he searched the other hand. He found another cursed seal of earth on the back of his hand. He knew better than to think it was another cursed seal. It was clearly for designing purposes. Okay, I'll check what's inside later, he thought, wrapping both hands. He just now noticed that he was only wearing his black and white boxers. He blinked a few times and thought, where the hell are my shorts? Naruto muttered with a twitch of his eye. 10 minutes passed and Naruto finally entered his apartment. He was glad Kaidi was still on her mission. He didn't need any teasing at the moment. When he closed his door, his face split into a wider grin than it was in the morning. You are quite the actor, Naruto-kun, Yoko said, speaking for the first time in a while. Why, thank you, Yoko-chan. I have to say I surprised myself, Naruto thought, shrugging off the hospital gown he snatched before escaping the hospital. He turned back to the door and bit his thumb and smeared the blood along the middle of it. A seal array came to life and his apartment was now impenetrable. Yoko laughed rather loudly. I know you surprised me when you fell asleep out of nowhere. Naruto chuckled as his bandages began to slowly break into smoke. I ran out of things to say that wouldn't reveal anything big about the past 5 years, Naruto thought as the entire length of the bandages turned to smoke. They rematerialized in the air before falling to the floor. The blonde felt some of his chakra returning to him and he smiled at the seal on his left hand. He wasn't ready to see what Kabuto gifted to him. Right now, he was starving and luckily he had just the thing to satiate his hunger. Ramen noodles were always his answer to emergency meals. It didn't take him long to prepare and it was delicious on his taste buds. Minutes later and his meal was ready for eating. The noodles didn't stand a chance and he was finished in less time than it took him to prepare it. Fortunately, they were fulfilling enough to keep his mind off of being hungry for a while. Go on, check the seal. I'm dying to find out what Kabuto gave you. All right, calm down, Naruto said before unsealing the item before shock entered his eyes. You know, that Kabuto sure knows how to be a team player. Yoko spoke after a few minutes of silence. All Naruto could do was hold the small cylinder-shaped container filled with medical liquid and stare at the floating pair of white, featureless eyes. I might have to agree with you there. I only asked for one, but he gives me two. Naruto murmured the last part. He encased his hands in chakra and removed the two ocular orbs, being ever gentle. Remember what you trained for. It's going to take a little longer considering we only trained for one. I hope you don't have plans for the next few hours, Yoko said, getting comfortable. Naruto slowly sat on his cot and breathed softly as his chakra began surrounding the orbs. He closed his eyes as he focused entirely on the eyes in his hands. What he was doing was making it so that the foreign eyes would be compatible with his body, more so his own bloodline. He never had to do this, so he didn't know what the estimated time of completion would be. Right now his own chakra was battling the remaining chakra that still remained stored in the eyes. He couldn't simply overpower and defeat the chakra. He could, but that would prove detrimental to his goal and forever hamper the ocular abilities. No, his goal was to coax the chakra and let it merge with his own. That will provide him with the full abilities and could ever enhance them to a degree. Of course this was all in theory, but if he had to choose, he would easily choose the latter of theories. XXXL and FXXX. Hiruzen stood in his office. He was sure that by the time Naruto woke up we'll be on his way home. He was rather proud of the boy for revealing what he knew. It seemed like he was back to normal, well as normal as things could be now. He looked out the window of his large office and stared at the head of the boy's father. Minato-kun, your boy's growing up faster than we're ready for. Thought luckily the blonde had a friend in young Ino. He was sure that if Naruto was beginning to go back towards Orochimaru, she would steer him back to her. Fortunately, his confession gave him a legitimate reason to put Anbu back on him. After all, he was a security risk and a strong one. No doubt Chunin level, if not higher. He made it clearly apparent that he was holding back, even against Kakashi. In truth, he didn't know if he should keep him in the academy. But again, his thoughts went to Ino and her influence on him. He knew the two shared a kiss in the hospital room, and he knew that after more time with her, Naruto would begin revealing where Orochimaru might be hiding. He didn't feel any guilt from using the young platinum blonde. Naruto had the potential of being the biggest criminal Konoha ever produced. XXXL and FXXX. After 3 hours of negotiations, the stubborn eyes finally gave in. They slowly billowed into wispy streams of black smoke and circled above his hand. Naruto flashed the proudest grin of his young life. He wiped his brow, finding it covered with a thick coat of sweat. That took longer than I thought. Naruto heaved, finding himself partially out of breath. Indeed, that was some stubborn chakra. It was like the entire Hyuga clan was trying to stop you. Yoko commented as the cloud of smoke separated into 2 separate balls of smoke. That is why it's better to merge my bloodline with chakra's items. Naruto thought while extending both of his hands out, each of his palms facing a swirling mass of smoke. Nearly instantly, the smoke shot into his hands. Both of the hands showed a thick black bar fashioned into a circle with a second, smaller and very thin, circle inside it. He reached over for his bandages, and the moment he grabbed them, they exploded in a cloud of smoke and quickly slithered around his arms. Seconds later, and they were back to being bandages. The next night he had to work on switching eyes. If a mistake was made, he might have to resort to asking Kabuto for help. 1 year later, another year passed and things have changed just a little bit. Naruto sat atop the Hokage mountain on his father's nose. He always found himself atop that mountain just enjoying the view with his stolen eyes. Since this was the year that he was going to become a ninja of Konoha, his attire changed. He was wearing a dark green gi that was loose around his arms. The bandages were still around his arms. He wore black cargo pants and he wore black ninja sandals. Under his gi was a tight black muscle shirt that barely covered his cursed seal of earth. During the past year, Hiruzen would send Kakashi to check on his cursed seal and would keep sealing it back up. Naruto got real tired of it and just left it sealed during the past 3 months or so. Speaking of the past year, after that following year of training he could finally feel that he's passed the mark of Chunin. He was now clearly Jonin level. Having the Byakugan helped some. He found that he could see up to 500 meters comfortably. That was amazing, but nothing special compared to some Hyuga that could clearly see several more 100 meters than he could. He never used the dojutsu in public because there wasn't much he could do to conceal the bulging veins from view. Those stupid veins were way too visible for his liking. He's been thinking of a solution to that problem. If he was able to mix the properties of both pairs of eyes to create one pair, then that would save him lots of wasted time in switching. It could be like a regular dojutsu in which he was able to activate and deactivate upon command. He's already sent Orochimaru a message concerning his situation. Now he was just waiting on the man to give him the answer. He felt that he might need a set of burner eyes, a pair that he could discard quickly when he was finished with them. He frowned and exhaled a long stream of smoke from the cigarette between his fingers. He switched his eyes to normal with a blink of his eyes. Whichever pair of eyes weren't in use were sealed under his eyelids. Yoko was actually the one to give him that idea. Maybe with that he could have them act like a dojutsu, but it just wasn't the same. A blink of your eyes could mean certain death while in a fight. There was a time when he walked through the village with the Byakugan activated. He had a masking genjutsu around his eyes, though he almost got caught by a few Hyuga. He leaned his head back into the bridge of his father's nose and exhaled another stream of smoke. He knew he had about 15 minutes before he needed to get to class and take his exam. He grinned, feeling himself shudder with excitement. The boring portion of his life was exiting with every minute that went by during that day. This day also meant that he was one more step closer to completing his plan. On the road to completion was the strength needed and he wasn't going to forget to pick it up. He put out the cigarette using his father's nose. He patted the spot and stood to his feet. I'm not sure if this is the way you wanted my life to be, father. Naruto said, turning his head and looking at Minato's face, but I can't hate you for choosing this for me. He leapt off the mountain and promptly broke down into black smoke, which quickly thinned out clearly into the air. He let the wind guide him stealthily to the academy grounds. Naruto materialized on a tree branch in the academy training ground. He cracked his neck and surveyed the area. It was empty save for about 2 young students having some last-minute sparring. Naruto shook his head before silently dropping to the ground. He spared the duo a last-minute glance before turning and walking towards the building. He had about 10 minutes before class started, so he wasn't in any hurry. The following year hadn't been following his routine at all. It was to such a degree that he hadn't seen Kaidi in 3 months. He sighed. It might have been Ino's doing a bit. She was always clinging on to him wherever he went. He wasn't sure if she knew about his bloodline, but if she did, she wasn't revealing any clues. She was slowly wiggling her way into his heart, and he had to admit he was loving the attention. Nobody in Odo gave him that kind of attention, which he was glad for, as it was mostly dudes there anyway. Speaking of the platinum blonde, she was waiting for him. She was wearing the same attire as always, so there wasn't any difference in her appearance. Except for the fact that her hair got longer, reaching the middle of her shoulder blades. Though he knew that without her magical hairband, it was far longer. When he saw, it was clearly reaching the middle of her back. She clung to his arm and smiled brightly at her blonde boyfriend. "What took you so long, Naruto-kun?" Naruto rolled his eyes at the unnecessary concern rolling off her tongue. "I was thinking on the way," he simply responded. "What about?" she asked, batting her eyelashes. "Stuff," Naruto said, chuckling at her pouting lips. "You want to relax on the roof before class starts?" the male blonde offered, making her smile. Ino nodded her head as Naruto wrapped his arm around her waist. She shrieked in surprise before Naruto jumped high into the air. The wandering students around the area looked at the two in jealousy. Some of them were envious about how much time the two blondes were spending with each other. Those two were like the perfect couple, something for them to beg for when it was their turn to be taken. Ino giggled when her feet touched the roof of the academy. She really should have expected Naruto to do something like that. "How about a little warning next time?" she playfully complained, still in her fit of giggles. Naruto didn't let her from his grip as he dropped down onto one of the steps, chuckling the entire way down. The platinum blonde sat in his lap and he held her closer to him. "Sure, Ino-chan, I'll warn you next time," he said, kissing her cheek. The whiskered blonde really didn't know why his behavior changed when he was around Ino. Maybe he wasn't meant to be a bad guy. He had to search deep inside himself and ask that question. Was he really a bad guy? He shook his head, ridding his mind of the corrupting thoughts. Of course, he was bad. He was just using his relationship with Ino as a cover. Fingers, pinching his cheek, brought him out of his daze. "You didn't even hear me, did you?" Ino asked with a pout, while pulling his cheeks outward. The whiskered blonde winced and shook his head carefully with an embarrassed look on his face. "Sorry, Ino-chan, what is it you wanted to say?" he mumbled before his cheeks were released. "Well, I wanted to ask you if we had enough time for a quick spar," she asked with a coy smile. Naruto rolled his eyes. "Why do you always want to fight me?" Naruto asked, already knowing the answer as he rubbed his cheeks. The female blonde not only saw him as the love of her life, but also as a sort of measurer. With him, she was able to properly gauge her own skills. He seemed way too strong for his age. Of course, she was suspicious of how he got so strong. Her suspicions were squashed when she began her training with him. After the first day of seeing his physical training, everything about him seemed to make sense. If you work hard, you get excellent results. She leapt to her feet with her hands on her hips. "My father told me to keep doing whatever it was that I was doing. He's very impressed with how my skills seem to be progressing. He thought it would take me longer to learn the basics considering I'm with you all the time. He thought my mind would be filled with nothing but boys," she said with a proud smirk. Naruto sighed as he crossed his arms. It was true, Ino had grown stronger this past year as well. Though most of her time has spent relaxing, not having 10th of the amount of stamina Naruto had, but at least her chakra capacity was growing as well. Naruto had already introduced her to tree walking and she was always trying to gain full control of her growing chakra. "You still haven't told him I'm helping with your training?" Ino smiled brightly. "Of course not," she said with an innocent tilt of her head. Naruto blushed at the cuteness of her smile. Or, she's so cute. I can't even be mad you're spending so much time with her and neglecting me. Yoko squealed inside Naruto's mind. Naruto-kun, you should know that a daughter is a father's most precious person to him. I'm his princess. If I told him you were training me, he would want you to go easy on his little princess and watch you like a hawk. That's why I have to tell him that I only passed because you trained me, she informed him, mentally patting herself on the back for the genius plan to get her father to accept Naruto as her suitor. Naruto blinked at her closed eyes. Your genius knows no bounds, he said, closing his own eyes and rubbing the bridge of his nose. Between Ino and Yoko, he sensed that his sanity was close to flying out the window. He released a sigh and slowly opened his eyes. Ino was right in front of his face, lips puckered, waiting for his kiss. He kissed her lips for a quick second. Okay, Ino-chan, after the exam I'll spar with you, he said, kissing her again. Good answer, she said with a mild blush as the first of two bells rung loudly. Let's get this over with, she said happily before taking Naruto's hand and pulling him to his feet. 15 minutes later, Naruto leaned against his academic test with a bored look on his face. He had finished 10 minutes ago and had resorted to spinning his pencil on his finger for entertainment. He was using his chakra to keep it floating a quarter of an inch above the tip of his finger. It was a great chakra control technique he made a few years ago. His entertainment didn't seem to be working well because he was still bored. He put his pencil down and looked around the class. He was sitting smack dab in the middle of the room. He loved that he was surrounded the way he was. It was the perfect spot for him to survey the entire class. Though there was one minor and major annoyance, Sasuke Uchiha was sitting directly behind him. It was amusing to feel his Sharingan enhanced glares for the first 3 months after the blonde forced it out. But now, it was just sad. The boy showed promise, but he was no Itachi Uchiha. He had his second Tomo and was working on the third at the moment. The only requirement he needed was to have a serious fight with someone faster than him. The blonde knew this because he had around a dozen snakes throughout the Uchiha compound. The Uzumaki knows everything the lone Uchiha does, while the Uchiha doesn't have a clue what the Uzumaki does. Though there was only about a dozen snakes in the entire contract that could actually speak English. The others just hissed, and it was very hard for his ears to find their meanings in the first few months. So he had a few translating problems during those months, but he quickly picked up on things and now he could speak with any and all snakes. The two locked eyes, the blonde's never changing from his bored expression. Naruto wasn't afraid of the Uchiha putting him in a genjutsu since Yoko was inside him ready to disrupt his chakra in an instant. All right, class. Pencils down and eyes forward. Mizuki-san, collect the papers. Haruka said. Naruto smirked and turned his head to the front as everyone gasped in surprise as their papers vanished from sight while they were still writing on them. Naruto turned his attention to Ino, who was sitting right beside him. How do you do? He asked, to which she smiled softly. I think I did all right. I think we should have spent just a little more time studying at the library. I don't think I got the perfect score I was aiming for, she said, knowing that Naruto was Rookie of the Year and the smartest girl was on the Rookie of the Year's team. In truth, she only knew that because Naruto told her so. Naruto rubbed her back, knowing what was going through her mind. Don't fret about anything, Ino-chan. I'm sure you did just as fine as you think, Naruto said with a bright smile. But, he thought about something he talked to the Hokage about. He needed to be on a team with Sasuke, giving the old man the reason that he wouldn't be able to properly apologize to the boy if they were on different teams. He told the Hokage that Sasuke would think that his apology would be out of cowardice since he was going to a different team. Of course, all of that was baloney, but he just hoped the old man allowed it. He didn't care which girl was on his team as long as he had a reason to watch Sasuke's skills progress further. All right, class. Let's start. Continue to the 3 basic techniques. Those who successfully pull off the techniques will pass. Those who don't, better luck next year, Mizuki said as he motioned for everyone to gather outside Hokage's office. 1 hour later, Hokage sat on the edge of his desk while reading the document that held which students passed the exam and which failed. He was proud to see 30 of the 35 students passed. The perfect number in his opinion. He began writing numbers next to names, working on putting them in teams, and minutes later he came at a stop. He narrowed his eyes in Naruto's name. He wanted to be paired with Sasuke for an asinine reason, but he couldn't simply deny his request. With the confession of his secrets, he began to train openly to his hawking eye. And he knew with his growing skills, only Kakashi was able to keep him under control if he was to spiral out of control. Kakashi was also needed to train Sasuke in his Sharingan, so the decision was quite easy. Though seeing as how Naruto was the Rookie of the Year and Sasuke wasn't the dead last, he came to impasse. It would mess up his whole system that he put together to keep the dead last with the Rookie of the Year along with the smartest female. Damn it, Naruto, Iruka mumbled before throwing caution to the wind. He finished the team selection and handed the paper to a waiting Jonin. The man nodded and body flickered out of the office. If things didn't work out, he could always transfer everyone back to his initial system. 10 minutes later, Team 7 is Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, and Sakura Haruno. Your sensei is Kakashi Hatake, Iruka said as a cheering Sakura and a groaning Ino sounded in the background. Team 8 is Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, and Kiba Inuzuka. Your sensei is Kuranai Yuhi. Team 9 is still active. Team 10 is Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Choji Akamaki. Your sensei is Asuma Sarutobi. Now that everyone's got their team, wait here for your sensei to come pick you up. Mizuki said, shooting Naruto a concealed glance before he and Iruka left. Naruto slowly rubbed Ino's back. It's alright, Ino, we'll hang out during our times off. Naruto consoled as the distraught girl leaned into his touch. Their new headbands adorning their foreheads. I can't believe I lost a forehead in the academics department. I can't believe she's still such a bookworm. Ino whined into her hands as Sakura continued to do her victory dance in the background. Who could blame her? She was with the strongest students in their year. She was absolutely ecstatic. Maybe she could even get both of them to love her. The pink head looked at both of the boys and narrowed her eyes. She had a lot of work to do. Others in the class didn't really care what teams they were in. Though there was one who was just as sad as Ino, and that was Hinata. The dark-haired Hyuga didn't know how she was going to be able to return home with news that she failed to get on Naruto's team. She was literally ordered to get on his team and she failed. Maybe she should have copied off of Sakura's test. She looked at Naruto, concealed anger behind her orbs. She hated when her father berated her. Naruto felt two pairs of eyes staring at him. He knew one was from Sasuke since he never stopped glaring at him. He turned his head and immediately locked eyes with the Hyuga in the class. He blinked a few times while they looked at each other. Her clan must have a lot of suspicion about him. They must have saw a glimpse of white under his genjutsu before he switched his eyes back. He tore his eyes away from the girl when her sensei came to pick her and her team up. That was also the moment when Ino had to leave too, since her sensei was with Hinata's sensei. Ino gave him a sad kiss on the lips before she left. That was the first time she had kissed him on the lips around watching eyes. He guessed that now that she had her headband, it was all right now for people to gossip about the relationship. Naruto leaned against his hand as he waited in the classroom as team after team was ushered out of the class. 10 minutes later and it was just the members of Team 7 in the class. He could immediately tell that the atmosphere in the class shifted. Though he didn't know if it was a good shift or a bad shift, but he didn't like either. He stood to his feet. When Kakashi comes, tell him I'm on the roof. Naruto said, looking at them and mentally raising an eyebrow at the look he got from Sakura before using a simple body flicker to head to the roof. When Naruto appeared on the roof, he turned his head to see Kakashi lying on his back with an orange book resting on his face. Hello Hatake, we meet again. Naruto said, crossing his arms. Naruto narrowed his eyes when the sound of snoring reached his ears. Is it just me or is that bastard sleeping? Yoko asked through seething teeth. The Hokage wouldn't get mad if I kill his best Jonin, would he? Naruto thought before a black python slithered out from under his right sleeve. The hissing of the serpent was silent as it slithered further and further out from Naruto's sleeve. It was a very long and thick python, easily longer than 8 feet and 10 inches thick. Naruto smirked as it swiftly wrapped around the silver-haired Jonin, shocking him awake. It just as swiftly coiled around his body and squeezed tightly. Naruto's smirk vanished when the man's body exploded in a cloud of smoke and his python dropped to the floor. Kage Bunshin, ha, Naruto thought with a mental scowl. That wasn't a very nice thing to do, Naruto-kun. You know snakes are very dangerous creatures. Kakashi said, appearing atop of the gate near the edge of the building. Naruto smiled as the python slithered back up his sleeve. Just wanted to tell you I'm here. You should know not to sleep when you have things to do. Naruto said as the tail of the python was fully submerged inside his GI. Behave yourself, Naruto-kun. You don't want things to go south, do you? Kakashi spoke knowingly. The whiskered blonde glared at the Jonin before smirking and crossing his arms. Whatever you say, Kakashi-sensei. The blonde said mockingly. Now, how about you get the others? You made them wait long enough. The silver-haired Jonin smiled behind his mask. I already did. They should be here in a few seconds. He said, pointing at the door. At that moment, the two others walked through the door. Sasuke came through first as Sakura followed closely behind. The Uchiha glared at the duo before leaning against a small wall adjacent to Naruto. Excellent. The team's all here. Come on, you three. Let's all sit down and relax. Why don't you three tell me about yourselves, your likes, dislikes, hobbies, and your dreams for the future? Naruto-kun, why don't you start? The scarecrow said, looking at Naruto. The blonde groaned as he and the others sat down on the steps. He sighed while he scratched his cheek and thought, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. My likes are training and spending time with Ino. My dislikes are brats that keep staring at me. Naruto said, directing his glare at Sasuke, who was still glaring at him. My hobbies are the same as my likes and my dreams for the future. Naruto trailed off as he smirked. That's a story for another time. Kakashi nodded, feeling the intro was adequate. All right, Mr. Ruda is next. The scarecrow said, pointing at the Uchiha. Sasuke glared at the Jonin and leaned his chin against his entwined fingers. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I don't like a lot of things and I dislike most things. My hobbies are none of your business and my dreams for the future. No, it's not much of a dream because I will make it a reality. I will revive my clan and I will kill 2 certain people. The Uchiha said with a glare in Naruto's direction before looking back at Kakashi. Kakashi smiled while pointing at Sakura. Your turn, Pinky. Sakura only she and smiled. My name is Sakura Haruno. My likes are, she trailed off, glancing to both her sides. My dislikes are a certain pig and stubborn people. My hobbies are really personal. She said, blushing deep red. My dream for the future, she said, trailing off just like Naruto did before her. That's really personal, too. She said with a trail of blood leaving her nose before she quickly wiped it away. Kakashi blinked his single eye a few times before he thought about his team. Okay, I have a killer with power, an avenger without power, and a crazed female loving both the killer and the avenger. This is going to be frustrating, he thought before standing up. Interesting. Okay, you three. I want you to meet me at Training Ground 7 tomorrow morning. That's where we'll be conducting your real genin test. Just remember not to eat breakfast. Kakashi said before body flickering out of sight. Naruto shook his head. We could have simply did the test now. Seems like a big waste of time. He said, rubbing the bridge of his nose while he followed Kakashi's example and vanished. Sasuke quickly jumped off the roof before Sakura could pounce on him. The pink-haired girl groaned and balled her fist in anger. I will get you, Sasuke-kun. She mumbled. XXXL and FXXX. Naruto hopped over buildings on his way to where he felt Ino's signature at. He promised the girl he was going to spar with her and he was fixing to keep that promise. He entered a training ground and knew that he needed to travel through a few more before he reached Ino's location. But at that moment someone kicked him, except it harmlessly passed through him. Naruto growled in annoyance as he looked at his attacker. Oh, it's you. What do you want, Anko Mitarashi? Naruto said, looking at Orochimaru's ex-apprentice. Oh, nothing. I finally had some free time and I saw you passing by, so, you know, I told myself that I was going to kill Orochimaru whenever I got the chance. When I think of you, I see the next best thing. She said, sending a group of snakes heading his way. The blonde simply stood there while the snakes went through him. He shook his head. You do this every time you see me, Anko. Don't you think 10 times a week is enough? He said as he hissed to the snakes and they quickly went back up Anko's sleeve. You even speak the language of snakes. That makes me even more angry. She yelled while running at the blonde. Naruto shook his head and twisted and turned his body, dodging all her attacks. Please Anko, Orochimaru still believes you can come back to him. All you have to do is stop being so stubborn, he said before grabbing each of her wrist and slamming her against a tree. His python quickly returned and wrapped around Anko and the tree, squeezing just tight enough to keep her still while a pure white viper slithered out of the blonde's left sleeve and bite into Anko's neck. She silently screamed before Naruto shushed her. Don't worry, it's just a mild paralysis toxin. He had to inject you with a lot because we both know about your immunity to most, if not all, poisons. Aren't we a paranoid one? Naruto said playfully as he released her wrist. He smiled at her and his python loosened its hold around the woman. Now I'm going to have to leave you here. I have places to go, people to see. I'll leave Emilia-chan here to protect you in the time being, okay? Naruto said as the python fully released Anko and went back up Naruto's sleeve, while the pure white viper returned and loosely coiled around Anko's body. The viper was around 5 feet long and 6 in thick. Even though her scales were white, they didn't seem to shine rainbow-like colors like some other snakes. Take care of her, okay Emilia-chan? Of course Naruto-sama, she hissed while her tongue flickered against Anko's cheek. Naruto narrowed his eyes for a while before he turned. Return to me when you sense your venom wearing off. I understand. Now leave me and Anko-chan alone. The blonde chuckled and turned his head. Have fun you two, he said winking before swirling into a mass of smoke and vanishing. Emilia's going to play with her, isn't she? Yoko asked the blonde as he breezed through dozens of trees. Naruto materialized and stopped just outside of a clearing. Of course, you know how Emilia-chan is, he thought with a smirk. The blonde chuckled and silently looked on into the clearing to see Ino and her new team led by Asuma Sarutobi. He knew that man from several visits in the past. It's his cigarettes that he's been constantly taking. Good times, Naruto thought in a reminiscent manner. The team of Genins already seemed to be covered in a bit of dirt indicating that they've already had the true Genin test and was being congratulated by their sensei. Excellent job you three. I have no doubt that you'll live up to your father's dreams and become the new Ino Shikacho formation. Asuma praised while the preteens cheered in accomplishment. Now how about we go out and properly celebrate the passing of your exams? The new Genins cheered again and Choji suggested a barbecue restaurant that he loved going to. Seconds later, it was agreed and they were on their way. The blonde was about to drop down and get Ino's attention before he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned his head to see Mizuki standing there with a frown on his lips. What is it you want, Mizuki? I need your help, Naruto-sama. The silver-haired Chunin said with a depressed tone. Naruto turned his head to the retreating back of Ino and sighed. Of course you do. Your incompetence is taxing on my nerves. It's a simple task I believed you could accomplish the moment I gave it to you. The blonde growled as Ino disappeared out of sight. I'm sorry Naruto-sama. The security is too tight for me to slip through. The Chunin complained to the blonde. Naruto turned to Mizuki with red eyes. You will do the mission or I'll end your life where you stand. He growled with elongated canines as his claws dug into the bark of the tree. The silver-haired Chunin visibly trembled as he quickly nodded and left the blonde's sight. I love it when you use such a commanding voice. Yoko swooned. The blonde took a deep breath and his appearance returned to normal. I learned from the best. He thought out loud as he felt a snake slithering up his arm. He looked down to see pure white scales disappearing into his sleeve. Well, her immunity was a little more powerful than I anticipated. Naruto thought as it's only been a few minutes. He could tell Emilia was not happy by how stiff she was. There's always next time Emilia-chan, he said before her tail fully vanished. Things are already going south. Naruto thought with an audible groan. Several hours later, Naruto grinned as he and Ino continued to exchange multiple strikes. He had to be proud of Ino since she was one of the best taijutsu fighters in the class because her unique style. She used momentum to her advantage whether it was for offensive or defensive purposes. Her sword, even though her attacks flowed like water, they packed a big punch. He was on the defensive and grabbed her swinging leg and quickly caught the other as it was on his way. With her momentum halted for the time being, Naruto promptly tossed her across the clearing. She twisted and turned and harmlessly tucked and rolled into the surrounding trees. Naruto grinned and looked up at the moon. It wasn't providing a lot of light, but he was glad she was using the surrounding darkness to her advantage. Very good Ino-chan. Just how I taught you. Naruto said as his ears couldn't hear anything out of the ordinary. That is until a faint snap of a twig reached them. He quickly ducked under the kick, turned and grabbed Ino around her waist. Excellent job, Ino-chan. You're ready for the life of a ninja, he said before kissing her neck. The sudden transition from fighting to seduction was rather unexpected for Ino. So much that she shrieked in surprise and grabbed Naruto's hair. Stop, Naruto-kun, you idiot, she said before giggling as his tongue touched a sensitive spot. The two blondes dropped to the ground because of Ino's wild movements. Grass impacted Naruto's back as Ino landed on him. Don't go hurting yourself, she said softly gazing into her eyes. Idiot, she said kissing him. Naruto ran a hand through her hair and deepened the kisses. Only he heard feet touch down on the ground a few meters away from them. He looked over, as best as he could without alerting Ino, and saw a retreating Mizuki holding onto a scroll. Seconds later a squad of Anbu appeared, quickly following suit. Well, he was right. I can't have him squealing, Naruto thought as a stream of smoke left his sleeve and followed the pursuit. He grinned before closing his eyes and licking Ino's lips, asking for entry into her mouth. She moaned and opened her mouth as their kiss deepened even more. XXXL and FXXX. Mizuki continued to run as the Anbu squad quickly followed behind him. Mizuki looked behind him and cursed while throwing a few kunai. He continued to run for a few more minutes before a few shurikens struck his legs. The Chunin stumbled and wildly threw one of his Fuma shurikens while he did a 360-degree spin. The large projectiles were easily evaded and more shurikens hit Mizuki's chest due to his spin. The Chunin cursed when he realized one of them was laced with wind and went deeper into his vest, actually cutting into his chest. He yelled in pain as he stumbled for a while before falling to the floor. The squad of Anbu landed around him. We got him now. Lion, prepare the thief for transport back, the bear-masked leader said before Mizuki quickly threw the other Fuma shuriken. A quick substitution saved the approaching lion-masked Anbu from death. Don't fight the inevitable Chunin, the man said before a cloud of black smoke forced itself inside of Mizuki's mouth. The Anbu squad gasped in shock as Mizuki began wildly clutching at his throat. His lips were moving as if he was saying something, but no sound was leaving his throat. After a gulping motion, Mizuki seemed to calm down. That was until Mizuki began clutching at his chest in serious pain. It was like his heart was being crushed. The Anbu quickly grabbed onto Mizuki and slung him over his shoulder. We have to get him to the hospital before he dies, the man said before he and the squad started running through the forest. But what the hell is happening to him? This isn't the work of a cyanide pill. I swore I saw something go into his mouth, a female Anbu wearing a turtle mask said with a hint of panic. They were losing their capture by the second. It was at that moment that Mizuki stopped moving completely. The Chunin died just now, the boar-masked Anbu told the lion-masked comrade. What the hell just happened? Bear yelled in anger as they saw a thick cloud of smoke leave both of Mizuki's nostrils. Whatever it was, this weird smoke had something to do with it, Turtle said before the smoke completely blended in with the air. Not telling Hokage-sama. 1, 2, 3, not it. Boar quickly said before a chorus of not it echoed in the air with the female turtle-masked Anbu being too late. Damn it, she said crossing her arms. So guys, what do you think about this Naruto story? Tell me your opinion in the comments. And if you want more Naruto what if stories, make sure to subscribe to Universe of Naruto. Thanks for watching.